Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to ordinary meeting of Council 4515. I'll ask you all to stand. I'd like to show my respect and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past, present and emerging on which this meeting takes place. I'd now like to invite Father Aliki Langi to the podium to deliver the prayer. Thank you, Father.
Mayor of Huntersville, Chuck Miles, councillors, I can see your names in front of you. Rose Williams, Elizabeth, Crusoe, Julia, Kristen, Tatiana, Lugara, Richard Wayne, Jim Sanderson, and all of you, thank you for inviting me to join with you in a prayer before the meeting of tonight. I choose Emmanuel, the name. Our names are sacred. Our names are divine for our reflection of tonight. And also the verse from Luke chapter 2, verse 14. Glory to God in the highest and peace to people of good heart. Loving God, we thank you and we praise you, God, our Father, God, and our Mother. You have called us by names. We rejoice at this time of Advent as we await to celebrate the birth of the incarnation of your Son, Jesus. We thank you and we praise you for the name that we bear and the family that brought us to this world. Thank you also for this spirit of this season, the season of Christmas. Glory to you, our God, our Father, and our Mother. And peace. People work for peace and development. Pray tonight for the mayor, the councillors of our council, Huntersville. You may give them the strength, the power, the energy for the duty that you have crowned them with, leading your people as a shepherd leading the flock. We make our prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Father. Please be seated. The proceedings of all council meetings are in open session, including all debate and addresses by the public are recorded and webcast live on council's website for the purpose of facilitating community access. Webcast archives are stored and available to the public on council's website. The recordings may be disclosed under provisions of the Government Information Public Access Act of 2009, the GIBA Act. Members of the public attending council meetings may have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded, publicly broadcast and archived, or as an observer or other interested party. Members of the public consent to this use of their image, voice and personal information. Councillors, there are no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest? If not, I'll move on to the confirmations of ordinary meeting held 4513 held 21st November 2022. Councillor Sanderson.
I just have a question, Mr. Mayor. I note that this is the second occasion that the minutes of the meeting of the 21st of November has been brought for adoption. Is there a reason for that?
My understanding, and I'm happy to hand through to the General Manager or the relevant staff member, is that because the amendments that were made by yourself, I believe, at the meeting, the subsequent meeting on the 1st of December, that we need to ratify the minutes again as per your requests. Moves Councillor Sanderson. Seconded.
One further amendment.
Councillor Williams with an amendment.
And that amendment is on page 3 of those minutes. It should read under item 3.1. It has the names of the speakers. Then there should be it should be recorded. But that motion was in fact moved by Councillor Williams and seconded by myself.
Happy with that to the seconder?
Yes.
Yes. So moved for seconded. Any other discussion? Councillor Williams.
It's just a minor amendment that I've noticed on page 20. It's item decision 272/22 on the following page, the voting block, it says that it was carried unanimously, but I'm recorded as voting against it, so it needs to be.
Councillor Sanderson, you happy with that? Yes. Councillor Williams recorded as voting against that motion. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favour? Against, that is carried unanimously. I'll now move to confirmation of minutes of ordinary meeting 4514 held 1st of December. Moved Councillor Sanderson.
Mr Mayor, if I could, there's one question arising out of the minutes. It didn't affect the accuracy of the minutes, but in relation to motion or apologies, I've turned off the page and lost it. There was a resolution to do with the adoption of the code of conduct. Part 2, so it's resolution 258/22. Part 2 of that motion was to write the Premier of New South Wales on the strong today, inquire about the progress in bringing council code of conduct for elected state members into line with that for elected local government members. Has that letter been set?
I'll have to ask that question through the GM.
What page are you on, Councillor Sanderson?
It is page 11 of the minutes.
At this stage, Councillor Sanderson, it has not been sent, but it will be. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? Is there a seconder? Councillor Williams, any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried. I now move to the mayoral minute, which I will read for John Anshow. It is with deep sadness that we recognise the passing of Hunters Hill resident and long-time bush care volunteer John Anshow. John passed away on the 22nd of November 2022 from cancer, aged 65, just 4 days before what would have been his 66th birthday. Family and friends held a celebration of Thanksgiving of John's life on the 8th of December 2022 at All Saints Anglican Church. A lifelong Hunters Hill resident, John always felt part of the community and wanted to give back. He was a founding member of the Friends of Betts Park and Gladesville Reserve, starting the Bush Care Group with the Bush Care Coordinator, Nerida Gill, in early 2005, and was the group's representative on the Council's Bushland Management Advisory Committee. John was a quiet achiever. While he was well known for his bush care work, he was active in many other community pursuits. Friends and community members describe John as the most delightful person, generous and thoughtful, skilled and effective, with a very large network of people grateful for the help and guidance that he gave them. John researched and wrote a book of the history of Huntleys Point, a labour of love over the last few years, and it is to be published posthumously, a fitting tribute to his great service to our community. And I'd like to thank his family for being here tonight. And I attended that service, and it's I've got to say I don't think I can remember a service that well attended at All Saints Church. It was a testament to him and to all of you as his family that are left, and he will be sorely missed by the community at Hunters Hill. Councillors, any speakers for this motion? Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'll be very brief, and I acknowledge Jan and the family here tonight for this mayoral minute. Look, I'd simply say I've known John for over 20 years, and it was a great pleasure. And I guess some words that I'd like to add to what you've put in your report here, Mr Mayor, is that I always found him to be a man of great integrity, honesty and humility. And to put it quite simply, he was a very good man and an absolute pleasure to have known him.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against, that is carried unanimously, and thank you to the family for coming today. It's much appreciated. Now move to item 4.1, upgrade to the Gladesville Reserve. We do have a speaker, Mr. Ewan McLeod. If you'd like to come to the podium, you're first up. As usual, you have 3 minutes. Thank you, Ewan.
really, I'm a bit torn standing up here between expressing my gratitude for getting to the point we're at, and also trying to keep my frustration in at how long it's taken to get to this point. As you're probably aware, it's actually like over 1,300 days since the grant was first announced. In that time, we've had 3 mayors, 10 councillors, 3 general managers. And through the journey, we, All Saints, have been treated like outsiders, despite being a local community club for the past 75 years, with approximately 70% of our membership of 800 residing in the community. I really ask that the council try and learn lessons from this journey and this process, so it doesn't happen again. Because as volunteers, it's not a good look, and it's not a good feeling to stand here feeling this way. But that's my whinge over. So first of all Saints are supportive of the proposed concept plans, and we understand the need for it to be split into stages. Now our preference is for while there's the stage 1. We would like to see it possible, and it's all subject to budget, because we know we haven't got all the tenders in yet. That we would love to see if the amenities block could also be moved into stage 1 to be removed. And we know that we could use the facilities at Henley's Community Centre for the in period. With regards to the removal of the cricket wicket and nets, so there was some discussion about this at the last community forum. Now, as per the needs analysis, the local cricket club are okay with removal of the cricket wicket, and that's driven by the kind of demand, i.e. the lack of demand for it. And also just want to remind everyone, because we spend a lot of time looking at just Gladesville Reserve. When you look at the other facilities within the council, there's 6 fields with wickets, being 3 at Baronia, Wheel Park, Bedlam Bay and Buffalo. And with regards to the cricket net, we've, as a club, we've always been fighting for them to remain at Gladesville Reserve, or if it's actually more suited to be at one of the other venues. My one point here with the way the motion's been written is that there's something around that they'll be considered in stage 1. I think that'd be better considered in stage 2, because that's where we're actually considering.
Sorry, you moved extension of time, Councillor Craswell, second, Councillor Sanderson. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. You only have another 3 minutes.
I think that was best considered on stage 2, because that's where we're actually considering where we're going to considering the amenities block and the playground. And then just finish off, I just actually want to express some gratitude. I want to thank the mayor for his support for the club from day 1, and also for councillors Prieston and Bagara since their election. I want to thank the new general manager, Mitchell, for he's actually really helped bring this home over the last 6 months. And I think with the change of general managers, it's been really helpful for Mitchell to bring that home. And for all the remaining councillors, I really do want to actually thank you for sticking to your principles through the process, because it's helped us get to this end position. Thank you.
Thank you. And councillors, any questions? Councillor Craswell.
Just off the back of what Ewan said there, through you, Mr. Mayor, just while you're still here, please. I'm just curious about the demolition of the amenities block. That I wasn't at the community meeting. I was relying on the feedback from that. If that block were demolished and the club were allowed access to the facilities at the Henley, are those facilities adequate for a soccer club to scamper back and forth to without parental supervision?
That's me or two.
Well,
General manager, I'll get the general manager to answer. He knows something about football.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Deputy Mayor. It's not a simple answer, because until we run the tender process, we don't know whether we would have adequate funding to reconstruct an amenities block. And secondly, there is a distinction between having the soccer club or the football club have access and then general public as well. We need to take that into account because, for example, if people are walking their dogs and they're going through the reserve, whilst we consider the field upgrade, that they have easy accessibility to toilet facilities while they're, for example, walking dogs. Yes, Henley could be opened, and yes, that would be adequate, but I guess I'd stick by the recommendation as it's written.
Councillors, any other questions of Mr. McLeod? If not, thank you, Ewan. We've got a proposed motion, Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Crassoy. Any debate? Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think, as we heard from the Speaker, this has been a long road to achieve this outcome. I might just say, however, to the Speaker, I'm a little disappointed in what you said because I think part of the journey was the whole debate about having a synthetic pitch, a synthetic field down there. And that's what held the thing up until that was resolved. We then reached agreement now to have a fully natural turf facility. And I think it has been a much better outcome for our community, and particularly in light of more recent evidence that's coming out about playing services and the quality of playing services. So I just would like that point noted, if I may. But I'm happy to support the motion as it is.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. Any other speakers? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I echo those thoughts because we've been through what a 4-year process to get to where we are now, and the sticking point was artificial turf, and I think we are now at a very important point in this process of being able to have a very sustainable outcome, one that does reflect best practice in natural turf. I would like to ask the mover to consider an amendment or two, if you wouldn't mind. And before I move those, I just make the point that in the current recommendation, there's no reference to the option which we're going to tender on. And I think that we have 3 options, and I think that we should be identifying here in this resolution, so there's no confusion, option 3, which is the perched water table model, which gives us 40 hours a week playing time. The other 2 options, option 1 is only basing status quo 15 to 20, and option 2 gives 30 hours playing time, whereas option 3 does provide best practice and does give those users of the field, the soccer club and the other various users, the greatest opportunity to get the most out of the playing field. That option 3, according to the documentation that was provided earlier, indicates it's 1.7 million, which is within the $2 million budget. So I'll get to the sort of amendments that I'd suggest in a moment. I'd also suggest that we get a quantity survey before we go, or at the same time as we go to tender, so we can gauge the tender outcomes against a independent source. Now, this is a little bit out of the box, and I think it goes to some of our sustainability credentials. We're going to generate, if we go for option 3, quite a large volume of soil, which is clean, but not suitable to the purpose that they now need to do with option 3. We have a process going on in Nelson Parade at the moment where an enormous amount of material is being removed. And my suggestion, Mr. Mayor, would be that we include in the recommendation a point that we consult with Property New South Wales to see whether that soil can be used in the remediation process, because we're just about finished excavating, and they will be in the near future, in the new year, returning clean fill to that site. The advantage to us is that we reduce costs significantly, would reduce.
Councillor Williams, do you have specific amendments that you're proposing?
I will, but
Yeah.
I'm talking to the motion.
Could you suggest the amendments before you talk to them?
I'm talking to the motion, but I can, okay, I'll move the amendment that insert point 2.
All right, just one moment while we pull it up so that our staff can capture it correctly. Amendment to point 2.
As point, yeah, in between 1 and 2 in the original, I put in adopt the redevelopment option 3 dash water, perch water table, providing 40 hours of playing time.
Sorry, councillor, could you repeat that for
Certainly.
absolute clarity?
Adopt the redevelopment option 3.
Yep.
Which dash is the perch water table, providing 40 hours of playing time.
Is that your only amendment, councillor?
No. In what would be now item 4, where we're talking about going off to, if you renumber them, it's likely to read the item 3 becomes item 4.
Yes.
It says, note that a QS assessment be provided before proceeding to tender for the upgrade works.
There's options running like a whole bunch of.
Yes.
And then insert a between that and the next one. Consult with Property New South Wales as to the use of the topsoil. In the remediation process of Nelson Parade. Reduce costs and ensure optimum sustainability. And then at the end, I would suggest that we have identified possible grant funding to support future stage work.
They're all your amendments, councillor?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. That's so moved, I assume.
Yes,
Is
sorry, Mr. Mayor, it's a point of order before we
Uh,
proceed. I don't
Councillor
think we've
Quinn.
yet got a seconder on my original moving.
Ah.
From what I can see there.
no, seconded, councillor Cresswell.
I was councillor,
Yes.
sorry, apologies.
Councillor Williams, councillor Quinn, you've got a question?
I've got questions, if I may, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager.
Yes.
So, I'm at ease with what councillor Williams is suggesting, but I just want to check, what this might do to the process that council officers have planned. So I'm just a little bit concerned if we're explicit about option 3. Once we go to tender, is it going to lock us into something that might push us over budget, for example? I don't know.
Councillor Quinn, I'll put that to the general manager, but I would imagine that if we're prescribing that there might be budget implications, and I would also add adding a QS when we're going to tender is probably potentially not a necessary step, but I'll let the general manager make comment.
Yeah, so you comment on the
Yeah.
option 3 and also other elements
Yes.
of what have been proposed in the amendment.
General manager.
Well, thanks for your question, councillor Quinn. As we've always outlined this, that we've tried to use an acronym, bronze, silver and gold playing standards. We would like the flexibility to go to tender for options 2 and 3. Option 2 is the standard that most councils would use. I am concerned if we lock ourselves into option 3, that there is potential, given the current market conditions, that will blow the budget. But I don't know what I don't know until we go to tender. We've got a very experienced project manager who understands indicatively where the prices are likely to land, which has been ongoing conversations with potential suppliers. But I'm nervous that if we go through a QS process, that's going to delay yet again and then put the process at jeopardy. And we all know that as you wait in the current environment, prices continue to go up. But I have no issues with Councillor Williams' suggestion around the soil, but I would like us to have the flexibility to explore both options when we go to tender and see where the prices land, rather than lock ourselves in.
Yes, Quinn.
Okay,
Um,
so in that
questions?
case, Mr Mayor, I'd ask the mover of the amendment if he would consider simply stating a preference for option 3 rather than locking us in to option 3, if I'm going to accept that amendment.
Is the mover of the amendment happy with that?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I'd probably say, following the General Manager's comments, that we have both options in there as being where we're heading forward, rather than just have a preference. I think if there is concern about option 3, although there is a costing for it, then that flexibility is useful. So I'd put in adopt option 2
or 3
for the purpose of tendering.
I'll ask the General Manager just to make comment on that.
Mr Mayor, I'd be appreciative of having the ability to go to tender under both options. So thank you.
Yes. I would also ask the General Manager just on I note that there is a quantity surveyor has already been engaged for pre-tender advice. So I do wonder whether or not spending money on a formal QS again is whether the mover would consider, given that we've already attained QS advice, whether getting a new one would be beneficial or not.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy that there is a QS being done, but that's not stated in the documents at all. That's why I've included it there.
Page 8, Councillor, of item 4.1. In the Q&A section, just above closing statements.
There you go. I'll draw that from the.
Thank you, Councillor. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
So are the mover and seconder happy to accept those amendments?
Yes.
I just don't understand why point 2 needs to be there. Personally, I just.
I answer that, Mr.
Councillor Williams.
I think we've got to move forward. Option 1 is just status quo, and I think we'd be doing an injustice to the users of those ovals if we didn't try to improve the outcome.
I'll ask the General Manager if he's comfortable with options 2 and 3.
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Yes. Okay.
In that case.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, councillors. That becomes the motion. Any other debate? Any speakers against the motion? For the motion? Councillor Crasaway.
Thank you. As mentioned at the last meeting, I was really grateful for the process that has been followed thoroughly and correctly since March this year. And wouldn't that have been a lovely thing to have happened 2.5 years ago? And of course, thank you for acknowledging that we did need to stick to our principles. It's our role in governance to do so. And in a perfect world, you would do so without being vilified on social media or made a mockery of, as some of my fellow councillors and myself were. But we did get there in the end, and we did it the right way. And I'm grateful to the General Manager and the staff and the consultant who got us there in just 7 or 8 months. It would have been wonderful a couple of years ago. A lot has been learnt since then, of course. We've established a sport and recreation committee. We have done user feasibility studies around the suburb, and hopefully we will be more able to address these issues in future. Though I am kind of glad for the delays we had, because of course that provided the opportunity that we needed to take a breath and see the state government's own views about synthetic fields in the state that they were in 2.5 years ago. And the risk of being a councillor who rushed ahead with an inadequate business case, having to face a community 5 and 10 years down the track with microplastics in the water just below it, and with a field that needed disposing of in a country that still doesn't have a recycling facility, although it might be on the horizon. So while I appreciate your comments, I don't feel I ever treated the soccer club as outsiders. I recognise them as dominant users of the field, and I wanted a good outcome for the field and for the whole community now and into the future. And I was deeply disappointed, hurt, humiliated, and enraged by the way some of us were treated during the election process around the soccer club in Gladesville Reserve. So let's try and move forward in a more positive way. I would have held back those comments apart from your own frustrations being vented. And sometimes I feel that councillors have to take it on the head a lot from the community who feel that they can vent their rage at us without recourse, as if we're here to serve and that we're not humans as well. So without ever having received an apology for that vilification and humiliation that we were subject to, I'm looking forward to moving forward in the future and not being the subject of such treatment again.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for? Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with our speaker in one respect about the unfortunate nature of the delays. I would point out that the principal delay occurred between the time of the grant and the time that the proposal for a single with a single proposal, and that was to use synthetic turf, came back to this council. I'm very pleased that the foreshadowed motion I put at that time was supported by both Councillor Williams and Councillor Crassoy. It has eventually given us a good outcome. We should have arrived at this process earlier if we'd been more open in those 2 years, if we'd included everyone. It was difficult with COVID and everything else, but it still should have been a more inclusive process. The lesson we must take from that is that the next stages of this development, that we must be open to everyone. And I'm also very proud of the amendment I put back in June 2021, which brought about the community consultation that occurred in Henley, ultimately, I think it was February, March this year. It should have happened sooner. We need to be listening to everyone as far as this future process goes. I'm pleased that we are only going so far with this amendment when it comes to things like the location of facilities. That's a question for the entire community, and we've got to be listening to everyone. So I'm pleased that we're finally here. We could have been here a lot earlier. And I would also make the point that at that point in time, one of the things that inspired me about the possibility of natural turf was seeing what Mossman Council did. Mossman Council delivered Middle Harbour Oval for under $500,000. Probably didn't have the same extent of remediation or perhaps quite the same extent of drainage, but they still delivered that project for $500,000. At this point in time, we're up for something like 3 times that. And that, delay costs time. And if we'd been more open about processes, open about what was going on with this proposal, open about the plan of management for that area that did not even have a community advisory group. There are mistakes in the past. We cannot repeat them. We've got to be open and include community or consultation from this time on.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers against? For? Councillor Crassoy.
Sorry, just a comment.
Yes.
Off the back of the community meeting, if you'll indulge me. There was a comment about the Sustainability Advisory Committee not having been consulted, and I did just want to clarify they were consulted. I was the chair of the committee at the time, and we actually returned extensive notes to council for consideration with respect to synthetic turf, which was the role of the Sustainability Advisory Committee. So just to clarify, they were consulted and they did give feedback.
Thank you for the clarification, councillor. Any other speakers? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor, speaking in favour, and I thank the councillors for including the amendments. I don't want to go over old ground, but I think it's been pretty well put here tonight that there are lessons to be learned, and transparency is the one that springs to my mind, and it's something constantly in my mind. The soccer club felt as though they were outsiders. The community felt as though they were outsiders as well. And
I felt like I was an outsider.
yeah, well, I don't think I felt like an outsider, but it seems as though the processes that we were going through in those days just didn't embrace people and didn't embrace a broad range of inputs and feelings. And hopefully we're now moving forward in a very positive way to make sure that as we move forward in further improvements in these fields or in this location, that everybody will be treated with the respect they deserve and engaged and involved in the process. There are community groups, there are sporting groups, there are individuals who just like to use the field in an infrequent and unstructured way. So I commend the motion in terms of moving forward. I hope we can afford and move forward with option 3, because that does give the best outcome for the sporting groups. And it would be a shame, as Councillor Sanderson pointed out, that during this time we've gone from something that Mossman did for 500,000 to now to something that we're looking for 3 times that. So let's get on with it and let's do it right. And as we move forward with further options, that we do that with everybody in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers for, against, for? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't speak for very long, just to say that I'm really glad this is finally happening. This is something that was on the horizon when I was running for election to council, and it was something that I really wanted to deliver for the ward that I ran in. Under the Williams administration, that transparency was lost on the community. I was not an elected councillor and I didn't know anything about the process, didn't know anything about the didn't know anything about the process, didn't know anything about the proposed outcomes, didn't know anything about the timeline. There was no community consultation undertaken in that previous era of council. So I just wanted to flag that finally we're delivering something that the community wants and needs.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for? Against? Right of reply, Councillor Quinn.
Mr. Mayor, my right of reply will be very short and brief, but I would like to 100% endorse, support the words that Councillor Crassoy said in her supporting of this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Quinn. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried unanimously. Councillors, could I just ask, we have a lot of speakers for item 4.19. Would you be comfortable if we move it forward? Councillor Williams, Councillor Sanderson, all those in favour? Against? We now move to item 4.19, which is the Boronia Park Sporting Community Facility. We have a number of speakers for this item. Could I ask the first speaker who's speaking in objection, Mr. Norm Lurie, to come up to the podium? Thank you, Norm. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the council for granting me leave to speak at this meeting of the council, specifically to agenda item 4.19, Boronia Park Sporting and Community Facility. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the need in Boronia Park for new change rooms, accessible toilet facilities and additional storage for all sporting groups. I do, however, have several questions relating to the processes surrounding the development of this project and its impact on community needs. First, my understanding from the outset was that the proposed community facility would be built without any input of funding by the council. In addition to the $312,000 spent in management time, consultant fees and the like, when did council decide to allocate either 1.2 million or 1.735 million into this project? Given the projected costs of $4,456,964 or $4,943,964 plus a possible 10% contingency and the input of ratepayers' funds, doesn't the council believe that it should now go back to the community and all stakeholders before proceeding? The knowledge that this proposed project is estimated to cost the ratepayers between 24 and 31% without contingency begs the question, does the council believe that this is the best use of ratepayers' money? The council has incorporated an independent report with an assessment of the possible annual income that a building of this type could accrue, a figure of 72,000. Has the council also sought to generate a report of the likely annual maintenance costs for a building of this nature? And if so, what is that figure? The council ensured the community that this project would not go out to tender until all funding was secured. Why did this project go out to tender before all funding was secured? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lurie. Councillors, any questions? Sorry if you just stay at the podium for a moment. Councillors? Councillor Crasaway.
In relation to what you said, just while you're standing there, through you, Mr. Mayor, I assume to the General Manager or the correct officer, have maintenance costs been factored in? I thought that they had been discussed previously, or am I catching you on?
I'm hearing that the General Manager's trying to Marie, to the Director of Finance.
Thank you for your question. At the conclusion of the report, there is a reference to the financial assessment and the business case that was performed in April 2021. In that business case, it itemised the maintenance costs of the building. There was also a calculation of an offset for casual hires outside the time that the rugby union was a club. So the principle of now the rugby union club paying the licence fees exactly for that purpose, to recoup the maintenance costs that council would incur.
So, sorry, just councillors, any other questions? Councillors? If not, thank you, Norm. Much appreciated. I now call Miss Annette Gallard. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I particularly want to address the recommendation that council contributes at a minimum $1.2 million for the Boronia Park sporting and community facility. My concern is that council does not have sufficient reserves to be contributing to the facility at all. My examination of council's financial reports for 21-22 revealed that although council has around $250 million in net assets, 236 million of these are in non-current assets. Of the $13.5 million that is left, about $2.5 million is not in cash or investments. And if council is acting like other prudent organisations, it's reserving 3 months of its general expenditure for unforeseen circumstances. This takes another $5 million off the available funds, leaving a total of around $6.3 million that's available to invest in projects. A contribution of $1.2 million is about 20% of those available funds. This is at a time when council has run a deficit on its own operations over the past 2 years, and when your own long-term financial plan reveals that the value of owned existing infrastructure is set to decline by more than $2 million per annum. Council's financial outlook is therefore very poor. It cannot afford $1.2 million. The proposed community facility may not generate sufficient income to offset the contribution that council is proposing. It would make sound financial sense to consider this proposal against the opportunity cost of other investments. How does council plan to fund repairs and maintenance to the Priory, where the latest proposal for its use has been knocked back by the Regional Planning Panel? How does council propose to deal with the Henley Community Centre, which is in dire need of attention? Councillors who pride themselves on their superior financial management skills should re-examine whether voting for this proposal polishes their credentials or can be seen as financially reckless in the longer term. So what can council do when the first acquittal date for the use of the government grant funds is fast approaching and they are faced with a building they can't afford? Council has gone some way to addressing this problem by value engineering to reduce the costs of the proposal. There is another pathway which organisations that receive government funding already employ. If Council were to take the financially prudent approach agreed previously to make no financial contribution and only fund the building through existing pledges, there would need to be some more substantial cuts to the proposed design. This process of redesign and resubmission of the DA would be unlikely to meet the timeframe for acquittal.
Councillor's got a move extension of time. Move Councillor Williams, second Councillor Quinn. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
However, as there is a preferred contractor to build the facility, it is possible to sign an agreement with them prior to 30th of June to construct sporting facilities yet to be fully designed in Boronia Park to the value of 3.2 million and still meet the rules for acquittal. Of course, Council would need to run this by their own auditor, but it has been done before and might be a better use of available time and money.
Thank you, Ms Gallard. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Crassoy.
While you're standing there, I will just say I never claim to have good financial knowledge, but I do know how to rely on the experts for it, and that's my job. So through you, Mr Mayor, to the appropriate officer or the General Manager, can you help us understand a little why this report is suggesting to us that we can afford?
General Manager, I'm guessing through to the manager of.
The last report to Council, report that we had to Council, we put forward a proposal as to what a Council contribution should look like. That figure and the two options here are based on what is in the balances of our unrestricted reserves. What unrestricted reserves essentially means in plain English is that's money that doesn't need to be allocated for future funding. So in layman's terms, it's what we call spare cash at the moment. So,
and how much of that do we have? Sorry to interrupt.
So residents are able to see each month the monthly investment report, and in this month's at the close of November, we're at a figure unrestricted reserves around 10.5 million. So 10.6 million, I should say. So 26.5 million is our total cash balance, and then there's a restricted cash balance that we need for all our outgoings. So that figure is 10.5.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
It does.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms Gallard. I'll now call to the podium Mr John Boast. John, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to address Council on the Boronia Park Sporting and Community Facility. We're greatly in favour of the delivery of these sports facilities at Boronia Park. They are much needed and long overdue. The same cannot be said for a community facility. My concerns regard the secrecy and opaque procedures that have led Council to rush into a decision to spend $1.2 million of taxpayers' money, of ratepayers' money, on this flawed process. Two things have always been obvious to me and many others. Firstly, the building in its current form was going to cost more than $3 million. Now we know this to be true. It was also obvious that the Huntersville Rugby Club was never going to raise $1.5 million towards the cost of construction. We also know this to be true. As an architect and project manager of 35 years experience, the tender process and the tender results are of particular interest to me. Council's legal obligation under section 175 of the Local Government General Regulation 2021 states that Council must record the names of tenderers and the amounts that have been tendered for a contract, and immediately after preparing the tender list, display the list in a place that can be readily seen by members of the public. I have copied each of you into my request to customer service to receive the results of tender. As far as I'm aware, no such list is available to the public, and this Council remains in breach of these New South Wales government regulations. Are Councillors aware of the quantity surveyor's pre-tender estimate? Apparently not. If the pre-tender estimate was broadly in line with the tenders received, then Council has misled the ratepayers because they would have been aware that the available funding was nearly $2 million short of the tender estimate. If not, then I would question the value of the pre-tender estimate. What was the spread of the tender prices? We don't know because the results are kept unlawfully secret. Differences in tender prices were significant, then pay to Dixon may well be too low and could seek to claw back funds through excessive variations. It's standard practice to hold a tender price for 30 days. Apparently not in this case. Hayter Dixon should be obliged to stick to their tender price or withdraw, not take the opportunity to add $100,000 to their tender price for increases in material costs and the withdrawal of a favoured subcontractor. This council also continues to fail to live up to its own commitments to transparent communication with the ratepayers. Item 4.22 from last night's ordinary council meeting. Subject: additional ordinary meeting of council. Strategic outcome: council is recognised and respected as an open and transparent organisation. Transparent organisation. Words fail me. Perhaps councillors feel that they have wasted too much time and money and effort to back out now. As far as I and many others residents are concerned, it's never too late to get it right. I implore council to get it right and reject this outrageous notion to spend ratepayers' funds and provide the much needed sports infrastructure with the available funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boast. Could I just ask if you could stay at the podium for a moment? Councillors, any questions? Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of claims of legal obligations that council has been remiss on. Can we just go over those and give the general manager or whoever's relevant the opportunity to respond?
I'll ask the general manager if he'd like to respond.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're comfortable with the process. We ran under 175.
Thank you, general manager. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you for addressing council today, Mr. Boast. What kind of facility would you be in favour of constructing with the funds available to us under grants?
I'm sorry, I was only here to give this speech. I'm not here to answer councillors' questions.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any other questions? I'm assuming not. Thank you, Mr. Boast. I now call Dr. Alastair Sharp to the podium. Dr. Sharp, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of the things I was going to say have already been said, which is good. So I'll try to pick up the bits that I was going to say. Basically, I'm speaking for the Huntsville Trust tonight, and we're calling on council to stick by its previous commitment not to contribute to the cost of the facility. And instead, simply to modify the design to fit the budget. To do this, the obvious way would be to simply take off the top level. At a guess, that's going to reduce the cost, and still going to provide the basic requirement, the primary requirements, which began right at the beginning of this whole project, which was to provide accessible toilets, change rooms and canteen, and additional storage for the sporting clubs. The only substantial justification for the glassed-in upper level is to satisfy the long-held desire of the rugby club for a clubhouse. It would provide negligible benefit to the general population and should not be funded by the general population. The reason this item's on the agenda tonight in such a calamitous way is that the rugby club failed to provide its promised funding, and as a consequence, council in secret session at the last meeting proposed to chip in, bail out the project. We've had only a couple of days to know about that because we didn't know until the business paper came out for tonight's meeting. Council's always maintained that it couldn't afford to fund upgrades, even to the grandstand facilities. It wasn't until August 2018 when it received a grant of $1 million from the New South Wales government that there was talk about building in new facilities at Boronia Park. In October 2020, a report to council proposed a budget of $1.9 million. Funding was to come from the grants with a commitment from the rugby club of $400,000. November 2020, council stated that it would run the project and made a written commitment to limit its total contribution towards the project to the in-kind work itself of its staff, estimated at $100,000. And council stated categorically that, and I'm quoting, it will need to ensure there are adequate funds in its accounts to meet all cost commitments as they arise during the planning, design and implementation stages. In December 2020, Council stated that the construction of the proposed sports and community facility will be managed by Council and funded entirely through grants secured by the rugby club.
Councillors moved, Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Quinn. All those in favour? Against? You have another 3 minutes.
Funded entirely through grants secured by the rugby club, committed funds from club savings and contributions by club members and other members of the community who would like to contribute. Actual commitments not to be made until all funds are in place. Building on this assurance, Councillor Miles, on 19th of April 2021, moved that Council agree that any financial contribution made by Council to the facility should be based on making the project more sustainable, such as solar, recycled materials, low energy building materials, insulation, water tanks. Wasn't any suggestion that it would go towards the basic cost. So accordingly, Council commissioned an architect to prepare a design appropriate to this budget. And the architect presented the current design to Council at the meeting of April 2021. And I'm not swearing this as a fact, but as I recall at that meeting, the architect declined to state that the building could be completed within the available budget. So why does the Trust object to bailing out the rugby club? Council's long maintained that it doesn't have sufficient funds to cover normal requirements. The previous Council discussed borrowing substantial funds to deal with the backlog of needs. I think Councillors Miles and Collins were pushing for that. So to bail out the project, Council will need to use its unrestricted reserves, and I'm interested, I've learned a little bit more about what they are, but basically they sound as though they're the emergency reserves. So if Council is going to use it and dip into its emergency reserves, that implies that they could be used for any purpose at all. And I think Council would be obliged to explain why the most important use of emergency reserves is on this project rather than any of the other possible uses in the municipality. So it's simply unnecessary to raid the emergency reserve. The project's already adequately funded to satisfy sports basic needs at Boronia Park. I suggest that the top level be removed and the costing for the rest of the project be assessed. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp, for your continued interest in this matter and for addressing Council. You noted that the facility without the top level would be an option in your mind, and that would address the sporting club's basic needs. First, I just wanted to note that I assume that you're aware that the club would be paying a licence fee, which, according to the report, would offset the capital contribution that's made by Council.
No, it would.
Okay, that's what the financial assessment report says. I'm just bringing your attention to that. And secondly, I think what we're talking about here is, yes, we can build a facility which is one floor or renovate the existing facility or, do, as you quoted, basic needs kind of construction. But we deserve better, I think, and do you not agree that...
Councillor Prieston, is there a question in there?
Yes, I said do you not agree.
Yeah, okay.
That we deserve better. We pay a lot of rates. We have been hearing about this project for a really long time.
Councillor Cresswell, sorry.
Point of order.
Point of order.
Councillor President, when we ask questions of the speakers, it's to ask a question to get clarity for the debate.
Yeah.
If we can stick to the
I was
question.
getting there.
Councillors, if we
there.
can just stick to the question.
Yeah. And so my question, I had a bit more of a spiel, but I've been cut off. My question at the end of all that was going to be, what kind of sporting needs do you think that a one level facility would satisfy in terms of the rugby club that don't exist now?
Well, they're stated, they're on the record. The sporting needs are accessible toilets, change rooms and canteen, and additional storage for local sporting clubs. They're stated throughout the file of documents that I've got.
So you would just be in favour then of renovating the existing clubhouse? Why would we build a new one?
I'm recommending that the top level, that the funds available be used to create the bottom level. Not everybody will agree with me, but that's the position of Hunter Trust.
Councillor Vergara.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, probably to the Director of Finance, are unrestricted reserves emergency reserves?
Director of Finance.
Unrestricted reserves are, the word unrestricted means, as opposed to the other accounts, they're restricted accounts that are tied to specific funding. So external restrictions deal with things like Section 12 developer contributions, all those restrictions that the New South Wales government through their legislation require us to pay out or receive money in for. So it's developer contributions is one example. Internal restrictions are internal allocations that we set aside for various different things. There's things like sustainability reserve. There's a myriad of things that are reported every month. So when we use the term unrestricted reserves, it's essentially what's left over, but it's not restricted or allocated to a specific purpose. So it's not emergency.
Thank you, Director. Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Prieston raised the issue of the licence fee recouping the capital funds. Is that correct? I think from my understanding of the discussion last time, through you to the General Manager, that you're not recouping the capital, you're just recouping the running costs.
We'll go to the Director of Finance.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just would like to provide a little bit of clarity about a couple of points that have been made here. So, first of all, it's not as simple as saying we'll just have one level, and it's not as simple on many fronts. The first one is if the facility that's had DA approval, and please understand that I'm coming in at the end of this process, not at the start. First of all, have to go through a whole new DA process. That's the first thing. And secondly, the original funding, both the federal government to the rugby club, the first bit of funding from the state government will expire by the time that process is run. So that's not really an option. Secondly, we've heard the term a lot, rugby. I just want to point out that the paper is the Boronia Sport and Community Centre. It's not just rugby. It's netball, it's pickleball, it's cricket. I think it's really important to point that out. Are the rugby one of the main users? Yes, they are. But in essence, they occupy it for half of a year. So I just want to make it clear that netball continues to grow at a rate of knots. Pickleball is growing at a rate of knots. And our cricket club is quite historic and been around for a long, long time, who would use it obviously during the summer. But just to be clear, it's not as simple as just saying, let's have one level. That there is lots of complexity and dominoes about that. It's not as simple as just remove one level. And the other thing too is that I cannot speak for the rugby club, but I would have a strong sense that if the facility was only one level, that all their donors that they've received thus far would have a question mark on whether they would continue to provide that funding out of their own pocket. Now I'll let the Director of Finance answer the question from Councillor Williams.
So if I've understood the question correctly, essentially the capital contribution comes into play with the calculation that we arrived to for the licence fee. So in other words, we took an independent market rental valuation. So the valuers determined that ex-GST we should be collecting $72,000 on a facility such as this. The final figure that's within the recommendation is based on the fundraising element that the club has provided towards this project, not grant funding, and we've provided that over 20 years to arrive at that figure. The purpose of licence fees are collected for upkeep and maintenance of buildings in a council context. We're not here to make a profit on the building, but we certainly want to, as a principle and as a financial objective where we can, the cost recovery where that's feasible. So that's as a principle, we would be charging a licence fee for the users of that building.
Thank you, councillors. Any other questions? Councillor Crassley.
Thank you. So just to clarify on that, we weren't charging a licence fee before because the rugby club and cricket club and maybe netball were helping fund the building of the project, correct? And now we are charging a licence fee. So before we were going to incur the cost of the annual maintenance, and now we'll recoup it in a nutshell. Yes or no? That's fine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the answer is fundamentally yes, but there's two components. One, in the spirit of complete transparency, during the licence agreement public notification, there was strong feedback from the community that a licence fee should be charged. We listened. That's why we've embedded a licence fee. And secondly, and respectfully, there is no project in Australia at the moment where costs of materials haven't gone through the roof. So hence, that's another reason why we've had to consider a licence fee to recover some of that money.
Thank you, General Manager. Any other questions?
Oh, and just clarification also,
Crassley.
Mr. Mayor, and yes or no answers is adequate. The closed session, which Dr. Sharp referred to as a secret session, away from the voted language.
I chose that.
Councillor, Dr. Sharp, please don't interrupt.
Closed session, just for clarification, was it was a closed session because of commercial confidence, correct?
In alignment with the provisions in the Act.
Thank you. So neither yourself, the Mayor, or any councillor chose to have a secret session that left the community out, correct?
Thank you, Councillor Crassley. I'll also clarify that no decision was made in that meeting to spend any money. What was decided was that options would be brought to this meeting to an open council.
Thank you. And that brings me to my next point, which is that the dollar amounts that we're seeing in this report, this late item, came to us councillors when the item was released to the community last Thursday. Correct.
Friday.
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 Is that correct? Thank you.
Yes.
So we also made aware of these figures at the same time. I just to clarify a point that you made, which was that we discussed it in the secret session. I just want to get away from that emotive language and get that straight. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
I'll now call Mr. Glenn Sanford to speak in support of the motion. Mr. Sanford, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, council staff. My name is Glenn Sanford. I'm the board chairman of the Hunters Hill Rugby Union Football Club. For the past 6 years, the sporting clubs of Hunters Hill, representing thousands of community members, together with local schools, have worked tirelessly on this project to get adequate and modern facilities. We've been pursuing the best interests of not only the sporting clubs, but the broader community. The state government has made clear its support for the project by way of 2 grants totalling $2.3 million. The federal government has made clear its support for the project by way of the grant of $500,000. The community support for the project by way of donations of $1 million from nearly 200 donors has been amazing. However, it is indeed unfortunate that the current situation in the building industry has meant that the price to build the facility has exceeded the funds raised. However, it is so pleasing to see the proposal put forward by council bridge the gap. This is such an important community asset. The community will thank you for generations to come. Do our part to help bridge the gap. We've agreed to your request that we pay rent for the use of the facility for the term of our 20-year licence. It's time to get this long overdue facility built. We're concerned, as I'm sure you are, that any further delays will lead to even greater costs. The facility needs to be built now to meet the conditions of grant funding. Use it or lose it. The design has been many years in the making and reflects fitness for purpose. Amendments will result only in a compromise. Please act to have the construction commence now by adopting option 1.
Thank you, Mr. Sanford. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Crassley,
Thank you.
you're on fire tonight.
I'm on fire tonight. Thank you. I haven't had dinner, so it's all the key turns, you know. Thank you for the presentation and for your long commitment to the project. Could you, and I'm catching you on the hop, could you tell me how much female participation in the sport just at Hunters Hill Rugby has increased over the last 5 years?
Oh, well, starting over 5 years, it's probably been 100%. It's been the fastest growing part of our sport, with the women's teams in the senior club, the girls joining in the junior club in tri rugby and other programs like that to come through. The other part, don't forget, is the netball part, which is nearly exclusively women. And don't forget the public school, Boronia Park in particular, that uses it. We are putting to you that will be an extensive use of the facility.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Prieston.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanford, for your volunteering with the club and also for addressing us tonight. You mentioned that the facility would provide benefit to the club. Could you envisage benefits to the broader community by the construction of the facility using option 1?
Oh, absolutely. As it's been alluded to this evening, the rugby club only has a seasonal licence for 5 months. It's not even 6 months, 5 months we have. And we use it on our expectation about 40% of that 5 months. So it's training, it's game days, of course. It's other activities that we would use the community facility for, season launches, presentation days, that sort of thing. The other powerful ones are the school, which it's down there nearly every day in inclement weather. This is shelter out of the weather, facilities that are safe and secure compared to the ones up in the grandstand, and a range of those sorts of things. I again go back to netball as well, and cricket with a growing number of young girls and women playing that sport. So the use for the community is just immense. And the ability of the council to be able to rent this out in the times when we're not using it. For instance, in our rugby season, Monday to Friday, all day long, it can be rented out to other users. We don't need it till late in the afternoon.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, thank you, Mr. Sanford. I'll now call Mrs. Bridget Dowsett. Bridget, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. It came as little surprise that the rugby club had failed to fully raise the 1.5 million in funds to construct the facility in Boronia Park. But it comes as a real shock to find that council is now proposing to break its commitment to the community to not provide the shortfall in funds for this divisive project's construction. Yet here we are again to plead our case that this has always been the wrong building in the wrong place. We continue to be astonished by the apparent privileged treatment available to this particular sporting group, even though there may be more involved, as you say. The project will not specifically meet a strategic goal of advancing sporting activity in itself. What the ratepayers are being burdened with is further largesse to support the overblown aims of the club to essentially have an upper viewing platform on an oversized building in the core of the parkland's open space, disrupting the heritage and environmental values of much loved Crown land. What justifies this determination by the club to satisfy their wish for their so-called palace of dreams? And this is a quote, on land that belongs to the entire community. The business case certainly didn't support such an ambitious project, and the grant funds provided were clear that they were for improved facilities for women's changing rooms, toilets, storage, and so on, all perfectly reasonable propositions. So how did that morph into what is now being proposed and under a license agreement for almost exclusive use by the rugby club for at least 20 years? The obvious step, and I know this point has been covered, but here we go, to take now is to use the existing funds to modify this building into a single-story construction with a smaller footprint that may even avoid the need to remove 3 magnificent healthy eucalypts. There should be no additional generosity from ratepayers. The bulk of this money has already come from public funding, courtesy of politicians. Enough is enough. If this project goes ahead on as proposed with at least an extra 1.2 million, what will have to move down the priority list for the limited spare cash that council has? This is a council that has no core budget for critical environmental repair. Much needed bush regeneration is covered through external contract funding and by volunteers. When will other priority actions in the 2020 management plan be implemented? And what other projects in need of council funds will have to drop off the list? Let's burst this bubble now and finally let some reality into the situation. Drop the grandiose plans and live sustainably within the means so far provided. That's what we're all expected to do. There should be no exception.
I've just got it on the tail in there. Councillors, any questions to Ms. Dowsett? Councillor Vergara.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, are there any projects that if this funding is allocated to the Boronia Park Sporting and Community Facility that will miss out? Are there projects currently earmarked to receive?
My understanding is no, because these are general reserves, but I'll pass through to the general manager or the acting director, the director to answer.
The answer to that question is, in local government, our budgets are tied to the operational plans that are reported through integrated planning and reporting. The provision and delivery of the facility at Boronia Park is one of the actions of the operational plan, and it's also contained with the capital budget that we previously did identify through the various funds that we had received. So these last two reports are to do with the funding shortfall, but certainly the project and all the planning has been within council's plan for some time. And it has been factored along with all other projects that are in the integrated planning and reporting in the operational plan. Thank you.
Councillors, any other questions? If not, thank you, Ms. Dowsett. I'll now call Ms. Heather Armstrong. Ms. Armstrong, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Make this office a bit easier. Just to deal quickly with the point the general manager raised about the fact that this is not just a rugby club, it's a community facility. I would note, in terms of the licence agreement, sorry. The club has total use of the club when it is allowed to, within its operating hours. The permitted hours are not specified. There's no annexure B to the agreement on the website, so I can't tell you what the exact hours are. So that's something that needs to be dealt with. But permitted use of the premises is is set out in item 12 of the licence agreement as follows. The bottom floor of the building for the whole year, all activities associated with the administration, spectating, training, promotion, coaching and celebration of the game of rugby union for the whole year. One floor. The top and bottom floors of the building for the rugby playing season for all of the above mentioned activities, including those associated with the storage of training equipment and non-hazardous material and equipment belong to the licensee. So basically they've got the use of the bottom floor for the entire year, for everything including the celebration of the game of rugby. The licence agreement gives the club exclusive use of the on premises. It specifically states that. I'm just trying to find the exact clause. Here we go. License clause 2.1. Subject to clause 2.2, the licensee will have the exclusive right and privilege to use and occupy the premises during the permitted hours for the term. Exclusive right and privilege. It doesn't sound to me like a fair distribution of the use of this so-called community facility. When you look at what actually the building is about, the top floor is a very large open space, which is for the celebration of the game of rugby. It's not a storage space. It's facilitated by a kitchen. It's clearly about celebrating with parties, weddings, funerals, whatever, pursuant to the additional capacity of council to lease out the building. This is not just a rugby club use. This is for other people to come in and lease the facility as well from council. It's not just a community use, it's a social facility. Let's call a spade a spade. This isn't just about football, netball and cricket. This is about a whole community facility, which is about celebrating a whole lot of stuff other than sport. Sitting around, looking at the game, celebrating the game of rugby, whatever, under licenses, presumably, liquor licenses, presumably, which can be obtained on a temporary basis. So there's all kinds of things we don't know about precisely how this will pan out, particularly for the local residents. I completely endorse the comments by Ms. Geller here in relation to the financial resources of council. This is a... Councillors, extension of time with Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Sanderson. All that's in favour, against, that's carried. Thank you. Remind councillors of Section 8B of the Local Government Act. It's always a wonderful, instructive document to read. Principles of sound financial management. The following principles of sound financial management apply to councils. Council spending should be responsible and sustainable, aligning general revenue and expenses. Subsection C. Councils should have effective financial and asset management, including sound policies and processes for the following. Subclause 2. Asset maintenance and enhancement. Subclause 3. Funding decisions. Council should have regard to achieving intergenerational equity, including ensuring the following. Policy decisions are made after considering their financial effects on future generations, and the current generation funds the costs of its services. It's completely irresponsible to even put up the proposal that we give $1.2 million of our money, minimum, up to $1.9 million of our money, ratepayers' money, when over the years we've received all these wonderful begging letters from council saying, we can't afford to service the roads, so let's put the rates up so that we can afford to actually put the potholes, fix potholes. I mean, look, we're not stupid. We can see that this is a misuse of council money. I'm really flabbergasted that the rugby club had the arrogance to propose that we should be putting up our money for this purpose. Absolutely flabbergasted. It is completely improper use of ratepayers' money when we have potholes that aren't fixed, that we're being asked to pay more rates to fix them. We have a rugby club which is very entitled and very privileged. We have a bush care budget of $10,000 for the whole year, for 55 reserves. That's disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. This is a complete skewing of council's budget to support one rugby club with a little bit of netball and cricket, okay. But really, I cannot believe that this is even being contemplated. I'm just flabbergasted. Thank you.
Councillors, any questions of Ms Armstrong? If not, thank you, Ms Armstrong. Miss Becky Klimek is no longer able to attend. I won't make the staff read her statement out because it's very short. It's basically to support the approval to construct as soon as possible, present and obviously not able to present at the meeting. I'll now call Mrs Kathy Inglis. Thank you, Kathy. You have 3 minutes.
Mr Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Kathy Inglis. I'm the president of Blaisdell Ravens Sport Club, which includes Blaisdell Ravens Netball. We have over 1,200 members and 80% of those live in the local community. So all the local community sports club together with her local schools have advocated and demonstrated the need for these new modern facilities. I don't think we need to cover that. But this has been recognised and supported by the state and federal government grants through the grants that have been received so far. The project has been supported by council through the approval of after much community consultation. It's also been supported by the local community through the many fundraising opportunities and the money that has been raised by the local clubs. I think it's important to remember that most of the members of these sporting clubs across all the sports are actually ratepayers in the Hummers Hill community. 80% of them would be ratepayers, as myself, in the local community, and would support the facilities provided to their children, to the families, and to the senior players in all sports. Many of the great assets in the Hummers Hill community that we enjoy today as ratepayers have been built by previous councils that have supported and looked forward to future thinking. We need to look forward to what this facility is going to bring in the future, not just build something and miss an opportunity to build something that's not suitable for generations going forward. This is an opportunity for all of the community to use, not just the sporting club, and it's not just a clubhouse for Hummers Hill Rugby. I know as Blaisdell Ravens, we would use it. We would use the community room. We would use other events, and we have our netball is 100% females, and all that their teams, young teams that train there. It gives us the opportunity to use that facility in a safe way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Inglis. Any questions, councillors? If not, thank you, Kathy. Thank you. I have a statement to be read out by Mrs Kathy Merchant.
Dear Mayor and councillors, unsurprisingly, the proposed Boronia Park facility comes up for discussion in a council meeting called a week from Christmas with a request of increased financial contribution from ratepayers. At all stages of the facilities planning and consultation with the community over the past 20 years, the broader community of Hunters Hill has not fully understood or mostly supported a large building centrally located on the park that will be made available under license for almost exclusive use by the rugby club. Nor is the need for a community room in this location identified by any transparent strategic planning process. The proposed facility is not supported by an adequate business case. Council has still not addressed the outstanding consideration under the Local Government Act of the need for a public hearing to recategorise the community land area for the proposed facility to general community use. The request by the General Manager that either 1.735 million or 1.2 million be drawn down from general funds in brackets unrestricted reserves to cover the predictable shortfall in the cost of the facility is unfair and irresponsible. Unlike some other LGAs, Hunters Hill Council appears to have no financial reserves policy to guide how such unrestricted monies can be spent. The Hunters Hill Council Annual Financial Report 2021-22 states Council exceeded the unrestricted current ratio benchmark of greater than 1.5 times. However, the 2021-22 ratio of 2.24 times represents a drop from 5.06 times in 2019-20. It is also below the 2019-20 Metro Council average of 3.36 times. Further, the council report fails to clearly state GST responsibility. The tendered prices in the Painter Dixon letter of offer to Hunters Hill Council via Alvear projects do not state GST, nor does the reduced annual licence fee include GST. Whilst an independent evaluation is welcomed, council is still proposing to subsidise the rugby club with the council proposed reduced annual licence fee to that stated in the independent valuation. This partiality is additional to the 10% fee reduction for use by the club of the 3 playing fields. The exclusive access arrangements under the proposed licence limits access by other sports for 20 years. The benefit from this exclusive access to playing fields was not included within the scope of the independent valuation. Some councillors are now placed with the dilemma of what to do with possibly $2 million of grant funding, reaching critical milestones and almost $1 million of donated rugby money from largely undisclosed recipients, but including a major private development company. As a final note, there is need for clarification as to whether the stated $1.5 million in the New South Wales Stronger Communities grant on page 6 of the report is a typo, or whether council intends to seek yet more government grant funding for this poorly located facility. Thank you for an opportunity to comment. Happy merchant.
Thanks as well. Councillors, we have some recommendations. Councillor Crassoy. Put the motion. There are 2 options associated with that motion.
As follows.
Yes.
That point 1 remain the same.
Yes.
And that point 2 says that council proceed with the construction of the Boronia Park Sporting and Community Facility. With option 1, no value engineering option undertaken.
Thank you, councillors. A seconder. Seconded, Councillor Vergara. Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, my son attended Boronia Park Rugby for a couple of years when he was, I think, 6 and 7. He is 24 this year. And back then, when I was a parent, whatever, of his team, the club were working on fundraising and trying to work with council to get better outcomes for the future of that sport and for the future of Boronia Park. Back then, there was a little cafe proposed in one of the designs that council had before them, and personally, as a parent with very small children, I loved that idea. I really, whether my son played rugby or not, and he only did for a couple of years, I loved the idea of being able to go up and use Boronia Park with my toddlers and immerse in that area. My children have gone on to do a little bit of illegal mountain biking up there when they were younger, and I've gone on to bushwalk there regularly. I love Boronia Park. I love Hunters Hill, obviously. I wouldn't be standing here.
The members of the gallery, you were all heard in silence, and I would welcome you giving the councillors the same respect.
Thank you. A lot of the speakers tonight talked about basic requirements being good enough, and our obligation to future generations. And I just don't know in any area of planning where you plan for basic requirements for future generations, especially with everything we know about the growth the growth in emerging sports and the growth in female participation in cricket and rugby. Basic isn't good enough. A good facility, it's not overblown, it's not too big, it's smaller than was originally planned, and I was one of the councillors who was part of that decision to make it smaller. It will serve future generations in our community. If you're very lucky, you can hold my funeral there one day. But I don't think it's just for the rugby club, though I have to say I'm grateful to the rugby club for their ongoing commitment to this project, for their participants and for future participants, and that they've worked so closely with other users in the area. And they haven't banged their chest and said, we're the rugby club and we're entitled to this. They never have. I've never seen it. I've never been publicly heckled or abused by any of the clubs up at Boronia Park. And it's been my pride to have overseen the thorough process that has actually been followed on this from the get-go. Now, I only became a councillor in 2017. I can say, hand on heart, unlike other reports of the past, this process has been followed. Consultation has been beyond extensive. Reworks have been extensive. Everyone's feedback has been taken into consideration. Yes, I would have liked the trees that you're talking about to have remained, but I also do think that that is the best location for this site, for the users of Boronia Park. I think it's the safest location for it as far as access goes. And I think that once it's built, it will nestle in well. And I think that 5 years from now, people will wonder why there was so much furor about it. Certainly as a councillor and through the Sustainability Advisory Committee, I've advocated strongly for exemplary design. And as the years have gone on and the costs have gone up, I've been disappointed to see a lot of compromises being made. And I simply won't compromise on sustainability options, and they're the things that are being struck off if we go for value engineering. It must be a sustainable building. It must eventually have solar panels. It definitely has to have water tanks under the ground and panels on the ceiling to secure insulation. It has to be a good design. You don't do a basic building anymore just so that you can redo it in a few years because it's too costly and it's not servicing the community. So I congratulate the General Manager who did inherit this handball along with many others, and the staff who've supported him and the entire community who worked so hard to raise this money. I thank the state and federal members who have supported us generously with their grants and with extensions of time to get this project built. I know that people are disappointed and they're going to be angry at me, and I know that future generations are going to be so grateful to this council and to the current community volunteers who make this project happen.
Thank you, councillor. Any speakers against? Councillor Williams.
Not speaking against at this point. I'm not to ask a series of questions. If I notice.
Yes, to whom?
Do you?
Yes.
And you can strip
yes.
it as you see fit. Now there's 9 proposals so that I can understand what we're voting for here. There's 2 options. One option has no reduction. The other option has 9. I was wondering through you, Mr. Mayor, if the General Manager could explain to me or show to me on the tender plans what these changes are. I would have expected at least some drawings as to say, this is how the building is going to change if you go down option 2.
Sorry, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, point of order. Option two is not the proposed.
I'm happy for the General Manager to clarify, although I would just say that the options won't be adopted in plans because we haven't adopted option 2. So, you know, to spend money on amending drawings and things, I wouldn't imagine we'd do unless council was going to go down that path. But I'll pass to the General Manager.
Yeah. Option 2 is an alternative. We are discussing.
No, I'm allowing the question, Councillor Williams. I'm allowing the question.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. The proposed amendments that would be made under option 2 have been outlined in the documents from Payne and Dixon, but I will also refer to the Acting Director of Town Planning who may want to add to that.
In terms of, through the chair, basically, I mean, any modifications would require a section 4.55 modification application to be submitted. In terms of, we need to have amended plans to come in with all these modifications, and the reasons of documentation included, and we'd assess it accordingly. At the moment, we don't have any plans. Once plans are amended and submitted, these modifications will be shown on there. And council will assess it accordingly, and to see if it's like the impacts in terms of are they like more impacts or lesser impacts. But that would be the assessment. And it's substantially the same application as original application.
Thank you, Acting Director. Councillor Williams, you've got another question?
I've got several. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the responsible officer or general manager. What is the business case that justifies an unbudgeted expenditure over other important assets and facilities that we have?
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Williams. I think we should consider the words, should council determine to proceed. Respectfully, that's your decision. All we're doing is, in good faith, transparently saying, this is the amount of money that has been raised through state, federal government and pledges. Rightly or wrongly, the market has increased dramatically. Both I and the Director of Finance are comfortable with the amount of money that's proposed under the reserve funds, but respectfully, that's your decision. And I'll reiterate again, should council determine to proceed? We're not saying to do it, we're saying these are your options.
Councillor Williams, have you got another question?
Following on from that response, Mr. Mayor, isn't it the responsibility of councillors to do due diligence in terms of being aware of what other alternatives the funds would be put to? You're saying that we...
Councillor Williams, yes, it is, but it is not the job of the General Manager and the professional staff to set those parameters. It is the job of the council, which is done early in the council term in our strategic planning session. So I'm not quite sure where you're heading with this line of questioning, because the strategic outcome that we're discussing is whether or not to commit council funding into this project.
Well, as we've heard tonight, Mr. Mayor, the issues in a lot of people's minds is that the priority of this project over other projects.
Councillor Williams, I might just reiterate that there's no prioritising over this project over other projects. If you read the financial statements, this is general reserves, and as such is unallocated. These are general reserves. So there's no project that this is in line waiting to fund.
Also to you, Mr. Mayor, when was the shortfall first identified?
I can ask that through the General Manager.
Councillor Williams, was first identified when the tender responses came in. That's why we run a tender process.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was asking long before we got to this point for the QS to be made available to councillors and an update on the funding that was never provided. So,
Councillor Williams, is there a question?
Yeah, when was the QS provided to the staff, and why wasn't it available, and why is it not available tonight?
Sorry, before you respond, General Manager, the QS was provided to councillors in closed session along with the tender documentation at the last meeting.
No, it wasn't.
General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Williams, as I stated on several occasions, and I will state again, you would not provide in a public open council meeting the findings of a QS to then basically say to all the tenderers, here is what you're dealing with. That completely wipes out any competitive advantage against tenderers. Can't be any more clear than that.
Mr. Mayor, my question previously was, if that's the case, why couldn't it be provided in confidential session?
It was, councillor Williams.
It wasn't.
It was.
I disagree.
You can disagree all you like, but councillors were given, councillor Williams. Councillors were given access to the QS report at the last confidential session.
I don't believe so. Anyway, moving on. Moving to the valuation report that's in the document. There's no indication of what the outgoings are going to be. I've heard that we've had comment that that was in a report a long time ago. Can the staff tell us what those outgoings are going to be to operate that building?
To the general manager, but I assume through the director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just to give a bit of an overview on the process, the instruction to the valuer is to provide a gross rental, and the valuer was also provided with the licence that was placed on public exhibition. The licence on public exhibition included the floor plans and included Annexure B, which was the permitted use times that the rugby club would be using it, and then the remaining times that would be available to the rest of the community. So that was provided to the valuer. In terms of the costs of the facility, that was itemised in the business case of April 2021. So in terms of all the various elements and a like-for-like building, there was a gross figure, and then there was a figure provided of occupancy. How much, if we had various rates of occupancy, 5, 10, 15%, what that offset in the cost would be.
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if we can be told what the costs are.
Okay, so in the bottom of the report under financial assessments, there's a figure there of approximately 37,000. That's with an offset of 15% occupancy.
Thank you for that. That's very useful. Just so that I've got it clear, in the valuation report, there's a set of plans. Are they the DA approved plans?
General manager.
Well, I'll go to the Director of Finance because the Director of Finance spoke with the company to do that assessment.
As I indicated previously, what I did provide the director, what I did provide the valuer was exactly what was on public exhibition, so that the valuer could see what was being considered as a potential license, peppercorn license, that what the original proposal was. So the plans within that license and what's in the public exhibition, I believe it's still on our website, is what was provided to the valuer.
I think you'll find, Mr. Mayor, and I will ask the question again, are these the current plans? Because they're not. They're an older version of the plans before the DA process commenced.
Sure.
And I can't see how we can take any credit with that.
Councillor Williams, I'll ask the question to the relevant director.
Sorry, I just in response to that, look, that may be the case, but in terms of rental valuation and how the methodology is attained, we do that on the basis of square metres. As I understand the plans, whilst there may be some iterations and a change from the DA, I do believe that the square metres in the approved DA is exactly the same. So that methodology is a consistent methodology that's provided with all rental market valuations.
Councillor Williams, have you got another question? Councillor Williams, you can disagree, but have you got any other questions? Councillor Williams, have you got any other questions?
Yes. What is the breakdown between the components of the licence in terms of the use of the facility versus the playing fields versus the lights? Is this only solely for the use of the...
Through to the director.
Yes, in both of these reports to council, the first public exhibition of the proposed peppercorn licence included a 10% reduction in the playing fields. That has been removed. So the proposal going forward is for this licence fee just to cover the new building. So all other things remain equal. So the playing fields is exactly as it was before. So the valuator was asked to ask for to value proposed on the new building.
So the 23,000, Mr. Mayor, is associated purely with the rental in the building.
Yes.
Now, the valuation report, Mr. Mayor, gives figures that are based on an annual return. How does council translate that down to a per hour basis?
I'll ask through to the acting director. The director, sorry, finance services.
Councillor Williams, can you just repeat that again? I just
Um,
didn't quite get all that.
In the valuation report, I can't interpret it as to how it translates down to a usage charge. It's a generic annual fee. How does that translate to an hourly basis for somebody who wants to use?
Well, Councillor Williams hasn't been built, so we wouldn't adopt the hire and charge of fees under our annual fees and charges for a hirer, for example, a birthday party, until it's built, which we would adopt in our next round of fees and charges paper.
Councillor Williams, any other questions?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, keep in mind, Councillor Williams, that obviously will derive us more revenue.
Sorry?
That will derive us more revenue from that facility.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any other speakers against? Yes, Mr. Councillor Williams.
Yeah. I'd just like to start, like many of the people here tonight, by acknowledging the needs for improved facilities for our sporting community, and particularly in relation to the needs of our emerging female participants in the sporting area. The original grants were based on those facilities, not on a community facility, and that community facility crept in along the way. I'm still strongly of the belief that we need to provide those facilities of change rooms, of storage, and of toilets urgently for our sporting people. The top floor of that building has always been a contentious issue, and one that now seems to have driven us to a point that it is unaffordable based on the original model for acquiring these facilities. We've heard tonight that the valuation report, which we're relying on in this document, is based on an old set of plans that aren't the same areas, that aren't the same distribution of terrace versus areas. So how can we go forward in a responsible way? And the information we've got is based on old designs and plans. And I would put it to you, Mr. Mayor, do we have the same problem with the tender process? What plans were put out to tender? Were they these plans or were they approved DA plans? To me, I find that uncertainty and discrepancy very disturbing and makes it very hard to make a decision around this at the moment. I do think that we've got a situation now where it comes against our heads. Procrastination, delay, not listening to community concerns earlier and acting on those has led us to this point. And the constant reassurance by successive general managers that we weren't going to use council funds, that we were going to meet at the targets within the budget. And I do add this in, until recently, the general manager reassured me that he was confident funds would be available. We haven't had a plan B all along this process, and I think that has been neglectful. Community haven't been listened to effectively. One side of the debate, and we heard this with the Gazewell Reserve issue, one side of the debate has been listened to over others. I think it's, excuse me, I think it's important that in this process that we do take the time, make sure that we are able to protect our budget. We've got a situation where we have X amount of unreserved cash. Councillor Quinn will remember how that came about, and that was the sale of the Gazewell car park. That has always been intended and I would urge council to consider it as a priority, that those funds should only be used for income generation, not to be used for something that is not going to produce its income. And I've heard the comment that that's going to be recouped by the licence fee. That is not true. Only the outgoings are going to be recouped by the licence fee. So to me, this is a cash grant without any consideration of where those funds could be better utilised. And I, as a councillor, need to know what my options are. There are plenty of options out there. There's the Henley facility, which in council's own property strategy or community infrastructure strategy said needed significant refurbishment. We've got the Priory now falling on our doorstep. It's going to need a lot of money. We've got, as was pointed out, we've gone to the community saying we don't have enough reserves or enough money to spend on our assets. And we've got a special rate variation. I agreed with that special rate variation, and I still do. But to then spend our reserves on a single-use project that doesn't generate any income, to me, is not the best use of that money. And I would imagine the community, as we've heard tonight, also feel that that's not the way to go. So we do have a lot of projects these funds could be used on. We should be using them to generate income. We're not doing that. And so therefore, as we move forward with a deficit budget, we're not able to bridge that gap. And you, Mr. Mayor, on many occasions have said that we have to find new income sources. The only thing available to us at the moment is that cash reserve to invest it in something that can give us money to reduce our deficit. I don't support the proposal at the moment, but I do strongly support the building of facilities, of change rooms, of toilets and storage. I think that's imperative. I think we should get on with it, but we shouldn't be investing our own money into this project.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak for the motion. Look, I was always actually a little bit uncomfortable that this council was building a facility that it wasn't contributing to. Now we have a situation where what is proposed is going to be funded by all tiers of government, federal, state, and if it gets up, local government, and by our local community. Now, I don't think it gets much better than that. The fact that everybody's chipping in to make something possible for the benefit of our community. I'm aware that a proposal for a community facility has been on the table of this council for about 15 years at Boronia Park. It was certainly the case prior to when I was mayor and again during the period when I was mayor. But at that time, we didn't have the government funding that has enabled the project to happen. I'm a great believer in sport as being a way in which people, young or old, can be happy people. I often operate with this equation, if you like, healthy bodies, positive minds makes for happy people. It's as simple as that. And if we're going to be providing facilities that are going to contribute to positive, healthy, happy lives for people, then I'm all for it. The current facilities, as we all know, are well below expectation. And we all know that. And there are other facilities in our municipality also that will need upgrade. This particular project has been clearly identified by, as I understand it, by the previous council, but also by this council as a strategic priority. We all identified it as something that we wanted to see happen when we did our strategic planning at the commencement of this council term. We're now doing that if it goes forward. And I think, we need to be a little bit careful with sweeping statements saying that the community has not been listened to or the community says this or says that, because I'm hearing a section of the community very, very strongly in support of this project going ahead. And whilst others may not be, other sections of the community may not be supportive of it, I think it's something that is well overdue at Boronia Park. We're spending money. If this gets up in this meeting tonight, we will be spending money on and for our community. That's what we have reserves for the benefit of this community. And I have absolutely no problem in expending funds that will go towards the wider benefit of people in our community of all ages.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers against? Councillor Sanderson.
This is undoubtedly going to be the most difficult decision of my time in council. From the time I played an under-13s, first for Huntersville Rugby Club until I played Wooden Cup in my early 20s. And then after that, a long association with refereeing and other things. And early in my days as a referee, I can remember refereeing an under-8 with a mop of blonde hair who I grew up to be the Glenn Sanford of today. But against that, as a council, you have responsibilities to weigh things up. I'm disappointed that, again, this is a project that has gone on for too long. We could have taken some of the opportunities earlier on. We had the opportunity. We could have taken that first 1 million. We could have done a brilliant job with the Boronia Park grandstand. Unfortunately, we've allowed this thing to grow too far. And this is what has caused the problem, the fact that we've got such an extensive facility. At the issue again with the cost blower, as I was speaking of in the matter of Gladesville Reserve. I'm very concerned. I mean, there was that we got to this point. Last term in council, Councillor Miles, as he was then, brought a notice of motion to council, which proposed to use $200,000 of grant funds that we'd received from the federal government that could be used for improvements to infrastructure. That proposal was completely rejected by the council of that time. Only 2 councillors voted in favour of that proposal. The voting on that matter was 4-2. Councillor Williams, Councillor Crassoy, Councillor McLaughlin, as she was then, and myself voted against it. Councillor Collins and Councillor Miles voted in favour. It's been a very clear understanding until very recent times that council wasn't going to fund or contribute to funds. I know a lot of people believe that. It's a bit odd. At the end of the day, Hunters Hill is a place because of the fact that 41% of our land is not rateable. We have this odd blend of what is considered a wealthy area, but a council that doesn't have as large an income as most people would expect. I'm deeply concerned that we propose to put now 1.7 million of council funds into this project. We shouldn't have got to this. We should have delivered sooner. And I know Councillor Prieston may say that was the fault of the Williams council. It certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't. But as I said, this is going to be one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had to make as a council. I have deep concern too about the report that we're considering tonight. We have a list of proposals that we might have chosen to remove from the building. It seems the numbers won't be there for that to happen, meaning that we'll have another $500,000 that we'll be putting in that we shouldn't have otherwise had to do. I am disappointed in the report that there is not the detail that I believe there should have been in those items that was proposed that be excluded. I would have liked to have seen that detail so you can vote with some confidence as to whether those items were excluded or not. There should have been more in the way of drawings and so on in the report. You know, I came to the meeting with two illustrations. One of what was approved by the DA, because the costings for the rental had been done on the basis of an earlier design was ultimately superseded. I was concerned, in fact, whether the actual tenders have been sought for the building that was approved in the DA. I am still in a complete quandary as to what to do with this. I have numerous concerns with, you know, the fact that the proposal to put council funds in really only came to the surface in our November meeting. I think we should have understood that would happen sooner, or that we would need to rely on council funds at a sooner time. I'm quite disappointed with the process. I guess going back to my times playing rugby and refereeing rugby, and I've got to say that in 1966, when I first used the change rooms at Boronia Park, they were inadequate at that time. I guess they're even more inadequate. But as Jamie said, they're hopelessly inadequate now. Something had to be done. But I still have grave concerns that we've, through delay, we arrived too late at possibly what is not the best solution.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Vergara.
I'll speak for the motion. This facility is needed. It will contribute to the sorority, fraternity and comity in this community. We hear over and over again, let's listen to the community. It seems like councillors only want to listen when they're singing from their hymn sheet. You heard Mr. Sanford say we have 200 individual community member contribution to this funding. That is a voice. It is a loud voice. This facility should go ahead. It's only right in terms of the financials, contributing $1.7 million for a $5 million facility that is, at the end of the day, council owned. To me, that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers against? For? Councillor Preston.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't speak for very long. I know you've all been here for a while, but I just want to echo the sentiment, particularly of Councillor Finn. He's been on council for a lot longer than I have, so he's articulated his views, which are congruent with my views much better than I could have done. And I just think it's all a bit doom and gloom. I think it's going to be really good, positive facility for our community. I think there's not been a lot of talk about the broader community using the facility. Like, yes, there's multiple sporting clubs that use it, but there's also people who can hire out the venue for funerals or weddings or other things. And I think that that is a testament to our community, that we would want a facility where we can host events or use it for other kinds of activities that bring us closer together in the municipality. And I think that that's a testament to many councils before us that had this in mind, that wanted something done at Boronia Park. And I think this community facility, albeit, you know, we were tempted with the idea of not having to pay a cent. The reality is that we've now had to decide whether or not we should contribute in order for it to go ahead at all. And I think that that's part and parcel with the role of council to, you know, weigh up pros and cons. And I think in this case that the pros outweigh the cons.
Thank you, councillor. That concludes debate. Before I give councillor Crasso right of reply, I would like to just make some general comments. It's no surprise and it's no secret that I am supportive of this community facility being built, and it's I'd actually like to thank councillor Crasso for opting for option one, because what this facility represents is a fit for purpose facility for all of the users that are going to be eventually located on that site. And that is not just the rugby club and the netball club and pickleball and Boronia Park and cricket. That's also council. This community facility can be used for precinct meetings, can be used for bush care, can be used for art shows. It can be used for a litany of things that this council will have in its remit for many years to come. It's the type of facility, quite frankly, that I was always uncomfortable, and Councillor Sanderson quite rightly points out that I was always uncomfortable for council not to make a contribution to. Yes, some of the key user groups that will end up occupying this facility are of this community. The rugby club and the cricket club and the Ravens netball, they are of our community. They are our community as much as anyone else is. We heard from Miss Inglis about most of her members being local. This is a really important piece of infrastructure, and I'm very pleased, pleased about where this vote is going to land us, because it will land us in a position for delivering this really critical piece of community infrastructure in the next 12 to 24 months. Councillor Crasso, right of reply.
Thank you everyone for your contributions to the debate, and thank you everyone for coming to speak tonight. I know it's heartfelt from anyone, particularly Jim. You always speak from the heart, and it's what sets you apart as a councillor, and I know it's a tough decision for you tonight. I can assure you that even if they had renovated your change rooms in 1966, they'd be ready for another upgrade by now. So let's hope that this building takes us through another 60 years. And it's celebrated in a positive way. I do just want to assure the community, because sometimes some people like to say the community haven't been listened to. And I can assure you I have been listening. I've read all your comments, I've read all your emails, I've seen all your submissions at multiple council meetings. It's our job to listen to everything and to listen to the experts and to weigh up everything when we make our decisions. We don't make them lightly. We don't do them to disregard your needs and your input. Certainly sustainability and bush care mean a lot to me. And I think this facility means a lot as well. And I want to see that budget definitely increased in the future. And it was certainly the feedback to that committee from me was that in the design, we do allow for some significant planting to go back into the field. These are all just words and tokens, because I appreciate you're probably very disappointed, but I want you to know that we have heard, and these decisions are difficult, but really positive. And I'm hoping that we can move forward as a council in a positive way for our kids, and that in 60 years when this comes back to council, the kids who are our future councillors will be able to say that they were the proud recipients of the first change rooms, and let's hope there's plenty more females amongst them. So thank you to everyone who has contributed their expertise and their time and their emotions, and I'm really excited about this project. I would have loved it for free as well. When we planned it, we didn't as a council say, wow, let's just secretly pretend that we're never going to contribute and then we will. Costs have gone up. There's been COVID, there's been a war in the Ukraine, there's been property market increases, and costs have gone up to 100%. So the fact that we're stretching the budget for an extra 20% is actually miraculous, to be honest. And I'm comfortable. It hurts, but I'm comfortable that we're doing the right thing. As a small council, it's tricky for us, but this will be one of the biggest projects we as a council have invested in, and I'm quite proud to be at the table that's been part of the decision to invest in it. I hope that everyone will get to enjoy the project. Everyone will see the tree plantings in the future, and I commend everyone involved. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Cresswell. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. With councillor Sanderson's abstention. Abstention. Councillor Sanderson. I'll now move to item 4.2, Bedlam Bay Swim Site Project. Councillor Cresswell. Moved with an amendment.
I'd like to move the motion, Mr. Mayor, with an amendment, if I could.
We can pull that up on the
Did
screen.
Forward at the very 5th hour this afternoon. Actually, not even an amendment, it's an alternate. And I'll just give the councillors a moment to read it. I apologise if the last minute.
Perhaps if you could read it, councillor Cresswell.
Would you like me to read it out?
Yes, if you could.
Okay. So the alternate motion is that point 1 remains the same, that council in consultation with New South Wales Health and National Parks and Wildlife Service proceed with proceed with detailed design, development application if necessary, and request for tender. 2, that the detailed design and request for tender prioritise budget into 3 stages to fund stage 1, which is universal design principles for an all abilities pathway to the beach and water, shark netting, safe shark netting, and wayfinding signage. Stage 2 is accessible amenities and accessible parking. And stage 3, which is pontoon and embellishments. Point 3 is that a further report be brought back to council with the outcome of the DA and tender process outlining stage costs for council to source or allocate extra funding when necessary. Point 4, I've just left in there, which is that council commence engagement with key stakeholders in the general community in 2023-24 to determine future infrastructure needs to complement the Bedlam Bay swim site.
Thank you, councillor Cresswell. Is there a seconder? Councillor Quinn. Councillor Cresswell.
Would you like a minute to just read it out again?
Could I just potentially ask a question to Ms. Goodman, just in relation to process there, and particularly around the lodgement of a development application, whether that's a requirement or?
Certainly. Thank you, councillor Cresswell. A few items that I'd like to talk to. The first is just to be mindful of the deadline for the grant, which is 30th of June to complete the project. So at the moment, with all things going well on the previous recommendation, it's a tight timeline to meet. To move forward with the alternate motion would require me to contact the department who administered the Places to Swim grant and to seek an extension of that grant. At the moment, the way Hunters Hill Council has been receiving grants and applying for extensions, I'm not sure what the outcome on that would be. I'd also like to make the point that I absolutely agree with universal design principles and an all abilities pathway for that area at Bedlam Bay to be included. However, in saying that, and with costings unknown at this point in time for many of those stages, I couldn't give a guarantee that that could meet within the grant scope, which is at the moment to build a pontoon and shark netting. So there would need to also be a variation on top of an extension. I'd also like to mention that proposing moving forward to 2023-24 is to do a comprehensive master plan of Bedlam Bay itself in conjunction with key stakeholders, residents, National Parks and Wildlife, Department of Health, etc. We really would like to make sure that when we master plan the site, we do it really well, we do it properly, and then we seek grants based on the scope and the need from what our community are wanting to happen. So I don't at all disagree with any of the points made in the alternate motion, but I am concerned that we won't meet grant guidelines by doing so.
Thank you. And councillor Quinn, I have a couple of questions myself as well, but you jump in.
Yeah, this is a question, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to the officer as well. Yeah, I went down there today to have a look, and I probably should have done it well before today. But one of the things that struck me is the plan that we've got with the net and the pontoon out there. The problem is, how do you get down there and getting to it, and the safety of that? You know, the stairs are going to need redoing, for example. But you couldn't easily take down there people that have any sort of difficulty walking even, just because of the way it's located. So is what I'm hearing from you, even for us to tweak the plans to get some, work scoping done on the staircase or some sort of ramping down to it, that we blow out the timeline? Is that what you're saying?
For you, Mr. Mayor, that would require going back to the department and seeking a variation on the existing scope, and also an extension of the funding milestone to meet the 30th June guideline.
A question, sorry.
Sorry, so can I ask, where did the pontoon piece come from in the original scope? Where did that idea come from? And I'm trying to understand why the access to get to it wasn't prioritised over having the pontoon in the water.
Mr. Mayor, that's an excellent question, Councillor Quinn. Not being involved in the previous actual application and a continuation on from that, as many of our projects have been, the original grant was to do the pontoon. Now, in terms of the community engagement involved prior to that actual application going in, I can't give you clarity. I can certainly take it on notice and come back to you on that. I believe that there was a swim site originally at Bedlam Bay, built obviously back in the late 1800s. So this was an embellishment, the current scope of that particular original swim site. I would definitely agree with your suggestion tonight, as well as those of Councillor Crusoy, that there are access issues to that swim site, on top of parking issues, obviously, with accessibility, and certainly amenities as well, given that currently there is no disability access to the existing amenity building, which is located not near the swim site. So there's certainly a number of significant considerations which council does need to look at in terms of master planning for the future.
Councillor Crasoy, just in light of that, I do wonder whether you would consider if we could scope out the access issues and potentially, not tonight, but allocate funding to them either on a council level or talk, noting that we have a session about grant funding very early next year, which is going to be priority, to maybe scope out some costs, and potentially we chip in, or parks, national parks, which also have carriage, and us could chip in. But
through you, Mr. Mayor.
yes.
Sorry, not through you. Thank you. Would you mind just pulling the alternate motion up again for me? So I guess to answer the question that you asked, Mr. Mayor, was, would a DA be necessary for an accessible path?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. A DA would be necessary for an accessible pathway or any other on-land works that were to occur.
Okay, and so I guess my point 3 speaks to what you're talking about there, Mr. Mayor, that the report come back to council with the outcome of that DA and tender process outlining the costs for council to source or allocate extra funding.
Yeah, no, and I think that would be a worthwhile thing. I just wonder with the stages as you've got there, the pontoon and other embellishments, which I'm hearing could potentially constitute a variation and an extension request. Perhaps, not wanting to direct you, but perhaps we could just say that these are the things that we wanted to embellish in the design, but also move ahead with a DA. Actually.
I guess the reason I've worded it the way I have is because I'd like to see the DA process begun as soon as possible.
Yep.
And that it not be a kind of an afterthought into the master planning. How people get down to that beach is critical. And if we create a lovely swim beach, then people need to get there, and they will try to get there. And right now, a mother with a child on one arm, definitely not with a stroller, or a grandparent, is at risk on those steps, and that risk is a liability to our council. I guess the reason for this alternate motion is to ensure that, as opposed to the recommendation, where the sort of future considerations are well down the line, the reason for this motion is to have the accessible path made a priority in the DA process. My feeling, I'm happy to speak to the motion. My feeling is that the department that brought us the Everyone Can Play guidelines and that gave us this grant would welcome a council that's showing leadership along the Parramatta River on making this swimmable river accessible. And for us to have an exemplar site, which is just shark netted initially, but actually accessible, I think is something that should be applauded. And the fact that it would be so much safer. But if we can begin that DA process and have it rolling through at the same time, sure, do the pontoon at the same time and let's talk about what extra money council would need to put into it. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us as a council. If this doesn't get up, I'm just happy to not vote with this motion because I think it's a liability issue for us. Those steps, I took Councillor Quinn down there today, those steps, they're an accident waiting to happen. I have slipped on them before, walking down with my dog to the dog beach. I'm reasonably able-bodied. I just can't see how a young mother with children or an elderly person or a person with an access issue could possibly do it. I truly believe the department that brought us the Everyone Can Play guidelines would cut us some slack to see us try and complete this project in parallel. And master planning aside, though I believe historically there was some historical master planning done that none of us saw either. But you know, I just think I think we've put the prize first, and I don't think it's where we should start. I think it's risky.
Just a question through to the General Manager. There's nothing in that motion that would that can't be run concurrently with the current process, and I think that's the spirit of the motion, is that we could concurrently run a DA process for accessible pathways. Is that how you read that motion?
Well, in my understanding, the answer is yes, Mr. Mayor, but I think the acting director of town planning can answer that far better than I. But I will make a comment just before Sharam answers. The director makes a valid point that the toilets and parking is very challenging there. Challenging even if we didn't propose a swim site just for its existing use. But in regards to the accessibility in the pathway, I guess there's probably a couple of ways to look at that. The first one is that we have got time to assess that in regards to next financial year's budget. That's one option. And the second option is to go to the heart of what I think you're alluding to, Councillor Grassel, is that there is a lot of grant money out there that talks about participation, health and wellbeing, and it goes on and on and on. So I can't make any definitive statements here, but there certainly would be in regard to the success of additional money, but there is certainly pools of money out there that we could apply for specifically around that accessibility issue. And you know, we wouldn't go and open a swim site if we genuinely felt that we had an insurance issue or a liability issue in regards to the accessibility pathway. So I completely understand where you're coming from, but I do think we've got time and options to consider that before, if and when it gets open. But Sharam, if you want to confirm that concurrent DA process.
Yeah, I mean, you have to lodge a development application at the same time. And other things we'd have to look at is the number of trees being removed in the area in terms of if you're going to put a path there and make it accessible. So we'd have to look at that, and also natural rock outcrops that are going to be impacted on. And for photo montages, we'd have to look at how it's going to look in terms of protecting the foreshore, or scenic protection area.
Councillors, any other speakers?
So I just a question, if I may. So the only little concern I've got is that this might kill, any delay might kill the funding of getting the netting, which is the basic thing we need down there. On the pontoon can happen any time later, as far as I'm concerned. But I think what I'm hearing is certainly the priority is getting the netting in place and being able to get to the beach, and then the other stuff we can add on, like the amenities, like the pontoon and other stuff later. But the critical pieces are getting there and having the safety netting.
Yeah. Yes.
So I just that's why I got a
yes.
bit of a concern that we might be spending all the money on the whiz bang pontoon when people can't actually get down to the beach.
Yeah. I would just reiterate that with the funding deadlines and the variations that would have to occur, and I'll ask Annie to clarify, we might be better off to try and deliver the project as scoped, lodge the DA at the same time, as soon as humanly possible, and either pay for it out of council coffers or seek grant funding, which I think that there will be for projects like this. I just what I want to be very clear on is that this motion doesn't preclude the project as is from continuing whilst we run the DA process, and I believe that's the intention of the motion. Or is the motion, or is it to vary the government funding as is?
The intention is that the pontoon be replaced by an accessible pathway down to the shore, unless, as part of the DA process and the discussion, we as a council decide we'll find some extra funding to do both.
Okay.
The intention is that the access to the site
be prioritised
over the pontoon, not the netting, just the pontoon. And if you've been down there, and if you've been to Nielsen Park beach, a lovely big net around the bay is all you need to be able to get down there and have a swim. If we can also have an accessible path and matting for people with access issues to access as well, it's just a wonderful thing. If we can come up with extra funding and put the pontoon in, wonderful. But the pontoon should be the icing. It shouldn't come first.
The General Manager, do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It would be my strong feeling that would require a variation, and then we would be in the territory of risk around the current funding deadline. And conscious also that we're 3 minutes to Christmas, so I would sense that variation, probably just being pragmatic, wouldn't even get looked at until late-ish in January. So not saying we can't ask, we just need to be clear that unless the director's got a different view, which I doubt she will, that that's going to require, it's not a case of, well, let's just build the shark netting and not the pontoon. We would have to go and seek a variation. And look, it is what it is, but we weren't involved in the original application. So consequently,
either were we.
Yeah. So consequently, we're picking this one up as well. So we'd have to go back. Just in very simple terms, we'd have to apply for variation.
And an extension, or just a variation?
Well, logic says that in applying for the variation, that you're not going to get an outcome on that. And I'm just crystal balling here. You're not going to get an outcome on that until the end of January, maybe mid-February. And if that's the timeline, which I think is fair and reasonable in terms of holidays and all that, then the time then to go out and do tenders and construct, we'd be past the deadlines. So yes, the answer is, Mr. Mayor, yes, we need both. A request for the variation and a request for the extension of the funding.
Councillor Williams. Sorry, question?
Oh, no, Mr. Mayor, I was going to bullshit.
Yes.
So I'll do a question if I may. So okay, if we were to proceed with the proposal as it is, because that's already gone in and it's been said, yeah, it'll get the tick once it's all scoped up and DA approved, to have a parallel DA.
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
Yep.
Yeah,
but it would sit outside the grant funding. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Which could
and the
could form new grant funding, or we could.
And mean, I understand why what's on land goes through a different process to what's in the water, because you're not dealing with maritime or RMS or all that sort of stuff and water leases, etc. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, just in the interest of getting a good result, could we move into an open discussion and
Yes.
tweaking the wording of this?
That's
to-
moved, so moved, seconded.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Against, forget what we were supposed to call it, because we called it suspension of standing orders.
Committee of the whole?
Committee of the whole, there we go, we're in committee of the whole.
Just need the wording back.
So if you could put the
Closing the video.
No, committee of the whole, as we learnt in a recent session, is not closed session.
Well,
So
previously
can
noted.
we suspend the live,
No,
no, or we don't need to.
just
No,
so
we don't-
that we can
we don't-
converse.
Yeah,
rather than-
yeah. So the yeah,
Thank you. Just to get the motion back up.
the motion, yeah.
So what I'm hearing, what councillor Quinn's saying, and I agree, like I want the thing to keep moving forward. So can we just say that council in consultation with New South Wales Health National Parks will proceed with a detailed design and development application, so we can take out if necessary, because the officers assured us that it would be a DA.
Yep.
And request for tender. So that detailed design actually include an accessible path. Okay.
Yeah, so I get the spirit of what you're trying to. So I guess the problem being, we've got deadlines to the funding. We're not going to, so we have to capture in the motion that we're committing to a DA process concurrently for the pathway element, which we can see.
Councillor Williams, I think, has some input here.
Yep.
Is it? Yeah.
Yes, what I was going to foreshadow was that we'd use the existing motion and add a couple of little words to it, which I can work to it anyway. But then have another part to it, as you say, to deal with the accessibility issue. Because we're going down the same old path we always go down, which is complicating things that we've already got on the table. And we may get, and most likely get to the point where the department will get frustrated with us. There's no reason why we can't do two things with this.
Yep.
One is the continuation with the grant funding, and secondly, flag that there is the parallel issue of accessibility. And they can be funded separately.
I think that we.
I just don't want it.
I want this to capture a commitment.
Yeah.
For council to lodge a DA for the accessible pathway, basically is what I'm hearing, which I'm very supportive of. So
that comes in part 4.
Sure.
Yeah. Of the original motion, you can expand that.
So would you be comfortable going back to the original motion, councillor Cressway, and then adding some extra bits?
Sure.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Can we get the original motion up?
Can I just say something?
Yes. We're in open session, which means it's a free for all, basically.
I'm trying to say something, but
Yep. Sorry.
it's fine to.
I don't need to.
Dirty there twice.
Yep.
I thought you were smiling.
We're in the back of the room session.
I agree with Councillor Williams. Let's just deliver it as is, because this is going to be the path on the edge of Hunters Hill Croquet Club that bloody goes nowhere. You're going to have a nice accessible path, but no one who needs that access can drive there. No one that needs that access can use a change facility. Like, there's no facilities that they need. I think you just deliver this as it is, and then do what you've indicated, which is it's more than just a path and the stairs. It's going to waste money. It'll be beautiful yellow brick road, but there'll be no one there because the broader infrastructure is just not suitable.
Not yet.
You can't drive one of those. I've got a van and I struggle to get down there and you've got to reverse up. You're not going to get one that's got a wheelchair thing anywhere near there. So I think you need to look at it more holistically. Let's not virtue signal, that's what you're doing, and do a nice path, but let's actually look at what people need to use it. And it's more than a path, let's be real.
I would argue that this is kind of just a discussion now. There are accessible bathrooms there, and there is a turning bay there, and
There's nothing inaccessible.
at the Bedlam Bay.
Yep.
Is there a
There are-
handicap bathroom there?
Yes.
No, I don't
There-
think there is.
What's the signs for then, I wonder?
They're not, you can't do
Excuse me
it.
for 1 second.
Yeah, I can't talk out of memory for the turning bay, but even if there was,
There is a driveway, but
it's really tight.
and with cars coming down, you just not use, it's unsafe. So a car has to reverse all the way up so that car that's turned can go up.
And also those facilities are high up, you've got to go up a
Yep.
steep slope to get to.
Yeah,
Up a slope, yeah.
and stairs.
If you're in a
There-
wheelchair, I think.
There's no ramp. You got to go upstairs.
Yeah.
Where all that bamboo is.
It's just, it just.
I
No end of
we do need to do
distraction.
it, but it's got to be done logically, rationally, and sensibly, and functionally, like so that it all works.
Horse and cart going on here, isn't there?
It is.
In terms of what the original grant.
Yeah, exactly. But we are where we
Yeah,
are.
yeah.
Well, the original grant application was actually originally around amenities block back in. I never knew anything about a pontoon and a swim site. It was originally an amenities block.
But isn't this
So-
under the places to swim grant?
Yes.
Yes. so
That's what it
why
ended
has
up
to be a
being
swim.
changed to.
Yeah, so
but-
there were two concurrent grants going at the time. There was the Places to Swim, which was actually a much bigger concept plan in water than what we've got now. And then there was another grant, which was an infrastructure grant for a significant amount of money and significant number of facilities, which had no community input into. And that is the grant that we did not receive, thankfully, because it would not have met our need. And it certainly would not have met disability inclusion, universal design principles as well. So,
And I guess so this is my concern, Annie, that if we shelve the access down the steps, and have you been there? Down the steps, yeah.
Bedlam Bay regularly, boys play cricket there,
Down the
down,
steps to the
absolutely down the
beach.
steps,
Yeah.
in the toilets, everywhere.
So if we shelve those steps, we're designing a desirable destination that a lot of people can't get to.
It's a swim, you can swim there now, it doesn't have a thing, and not a lot of people can get there. It just is what it is, unfortunately. So long as we've got a plan to make it accessible, that's what I think we need to do.
And there's the people are swimming.
Sorry, councillors, where have we gotten up to?
Yeah, sorry, it's just a bit tricky because as the general manager pointed out, this is a legacy project that a lot of us didn't know about. And I called and spoke with you about it this afternoon, Mr. Mayor, and unfortunately the GM was obviously flat out this afternoon getting ready for council. So because I wanted to discuss it. But
I think what's happened, just keep it as simple as I can, and I'm guessing, is that when the grant application was put in for this, there was breathtakingly no thought given to the access. That's what I'm sensing.
This is why we need transparency around grant applications.
That's, well, you need two things. You need complete transparency, which you will get, and secondly, you need the right scope.
Correct, and we're not going to.
So I think what's happened here, and I don't shoot the messenger because I wasn't here.
Happened a year ago.
I'm sensing that they applied for the swim site stuff, but didn't think, well, if we get that money, what's the issue in regards to the accessibility, the steps, it goes on and on.
Yeah.
That's what I sense has happened.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
And I'm happy for a commitment to do something, Elizabeth, in terms of for there. Because I understand what you're saying, but I just think we've got to deliver this and then look at it holistically.
And that can be multiple layers. It can be one, the path, and two, a broader facility for the sporting field as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're all accessible through granting.
Councillor
Okay,
Kratz,
take it
are we?
I'll just withdraw it, Mr. Mayor, and
You sure? Okay,
Yep.
all right. Have I got a motion to move back into open session? Moved, councillor Quinn, seconded, councillor Williams, all those in favour? Against, it's carried. although we were still recording, I need to report on what was discussed in committee of the whole, which was just a general discussion about the Bethlehem Bay site project. Councillor Crassoy in that session has agreed to withdraw the motion. That being the case, there is no motion on the floor. Councillor Williams, are you moving the motion in the business paper?
Yes, with addition.
Yes. Councillor Williams, sorry, could we just pull up the motion as per the business paper? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that motion with the addition of between 2 and 3. That the project provides adequate drainage to redirect runoff away from the beach to minimise erosion. And in 4,
Just let's capture this. And in 4,
that we've got at the moment, this will be 5, that we've got at the moment, the council commence engagement with stakeholders and general community in order to determine future.
Sorry, councillor, sorry. We're now amending point 5.
I'm just reading out what's in that last dot point, on the basis that we can add to that, to determine future infrastructure needs to complement Bethlehem Bay swim site. And then we can have 2 dot points under that. That one would be improve access, and 2 would be
5A and 5B or whatever it is. Yeah.
Need to do including semicolon A, improved access.
That's right. And B, it's already there, infrastructure, but I'd like to also broaden that to the wider use of the adjacent fields. So infrastructure that complement
improved amenities,
Bethlehem Bay swim site and adjacent sports fields. Are they 2 additional things that
and adjacent sports fields? Swim site and after Bethlehem Bay swim site in the point 5 and adjacent sporting fields. And then after including improved, it just put improved access.
Can't be improved amenities. I know infrastructure includes that, but infrastructure could be like drainage and,
Sorry, councillors, we're back in formal session, so got to stick to the rules. Are you happy with improved access and improved amenities?
Yes.
Yes, we have a motion. Is there a second to Councillor Quinn? Any more discussion? Yes.
Could we just make sure that Councillor Williams, that's the way that's worded now?
Yes, so I will read the recommendation. Yep, I'll read the recommendation that 1, council proceed with a detailed design and request for tender. 2, that the detailed design and request for tender include, where possible, the consideration of sustainable materials, products and existing on-site sandstone. 3, the project includes adequate drainage to redirect a runoff away from the beach to minimise erosion. Part 4, that further report be brought back to council with the outcome of the tender process. 5, that council commence engagement with key stakeholders in the general community in the 23-24 to determine future infrastructure needs to complement the Bethlehem Bay swim site and adjacent sporting fields, including improved access and improved amenities. Yes. Any other discussion? If not,
I'll speak
against.
Thanks, Mr.
Councillor
Mayor.
Crassoy.
I'm going to vote against this. It's nobody's fault. It's an inherited project, I understand. I am 100% certain that the department that bought New South Wales, the Everyone Can Play guidelines, would have supported an accessible path to Bethlehem Bay. It's not virtue signaling. It's something I've done ever since I was a councillor. I've advocated for inclusion and ability in our suburb, in our play spaces and in all of our design and our placemaking. I'm very disappointed that there's nothing here that commits to a DA to improve these steps. I know that the general manager and the senior staff will do their best to make sure it does get into future projects. It's not good enough. That sustainability and access are always an afterthought, and they're always the first thing to go when the money gets scary. I'm very disappointed that nobody else had the vision to see that Anthony Roberts, with an election coming up and his 100 days of Christmas announcements, wouldn't have the decency to give us a little more time to see this project through, let alone the money to do it. I can't support it. No offence. I know you've worked hard on this and I know you've inherited it. I can't support it. And, you know, it'll be great that some people will be able to swim in a shark net and jump off a pontoon while we wait for a very long time for the next stage to happen.
Thank you,
Question,
Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, if
Councillor
I
Quinn.
may, could I ask the motion go back up on the to the officer, if I may, if there any reason why the improved access cannot be included in the DA, even though it may not be funded by the grant funding?
Well, that's what I was trying to say originally.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Or can the DA only be what the grant funding is for?
Councillor Quinn, the DA is nothing to do with the actual swim site grant. There is no DA necessary for the swim site itself, as in the in-water works. On land, we would need a DA to put in any accessible pathway or any other infrastructure. We can certainly look at that, scope it, cost it, in line with everything else within Bedlam Bay and with stakeholders. There is nothing to stop us from moving forward with doing that. And I'd actually like to pass over to our Director of Finance, Procurement and Projects, just to ask whether there is, I was going to ask if there was scope to vary any future footpath upgrades or works that could potentially be brought forward, or what the process would be for that for 2023-24.
I'm a traditionalist, so normally would you like me to comment on that?
I don't think it's necessary, Mr. Mayor.
No, I think
I apologise.
through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the spirit and the context of the question is, if I've got it right, is if we do regard this as top priority in regards to the access, is could, for example, at the next budget review, a footpath that we've got slated for replacement, we take that money and we move that footpath into next financial year. Is that the spirit of it? I think that's the question. So the answer would be, from my point of view, well, of course you can consider that. Whether you do it's another thing, but you can consider it. It's a bit hard on.
Sorry, General Manager, we're getting a little bit sidetracked here. That's a matter for council and the next budget. So we could do that if we so desired. But Councillor Quinn, as your question's been answered, essentially that the project and the DA could run concurrently.
Yeah.
Then it would be a matter of funding.
Right.
That's not what's proposed here.
No. So we haven't got a DA in here.
We haven't got a DA explicitly in the recommendation, no.
But before you go to a DA, you need to know what you're going to do, and you also need
Councillor Williams, are you speaking, or are you?
Well, I'm asking the question, would you, Mr. Mayor, before you go to a DA, need to know what the scope is, what the issues are you want to put in the DA, and as it says in point 5 there, you really got to start engagement with stakeholders. So there's a fairly defined process we have to go through before we can lodge a
Yes,
DA.
Councillor Williams, you've been.
All right.
We get it. Councillors, any other speakers for the motion?
Yeah.
Councillor Vergara.
I agree that the swim site needs to be accessible, but I've heard this almost every council meeting. We need to engage with the community. We need to understand what they need, and it might be that they need more than a path or more than stairs. They might need amenities, they might need change rooms, they might need special parking places. And I think to actually deliver sensible projects within budget, you need to start with that community consultation, and particularly people who have the access needs. So I think this is actually you know, we could have done the consultation first, but we've got the funding. So unfortunately, that is what it is. We'll deliver the project, but what is important about this motion is the engagement with key stakeholders to understand access and amenity needs to make it a more accessible site.
Thank you,
So,
councillor.
Just
Point
of order,
question,
on
point of order.
clarification, the report does say that the community were consulted and the community raised accessibility issues.
That's a point of clarification. Councillors, any other speakers? Councillor Sanderson for the motion? Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think what we've come up with is a good way forward, and I agree. I understand Councillor Crassell was concerned about access, but as we seem to concur, it's important we understand what the community wants and how we go about it before we contemplate DAs. The other thing I'd like to acknowledge too is the work that Councillor Williams has done on the Parramatta River Catchment Group. I was fortunate on one occasion when Councillor Williams was not able to attend one of their meetings, and the work that the group does is, I think, quite outstanding. And I thought, just from that experience of one evening, and I was fortunate as a matter came up that I was able to provide some input into, and just the way they engage with councils all over that catchment area, I think is absolutely outstanding. And thanks again to Ross for the work he's done there. And I think that's been an element of getting the swim site on the agenda there.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Any other speakers against? For right of reply, Councillor Williams.
Oh, just briefly, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I'm supporting this approach. It doesn't negate access, and as Councillor Vergara pointed out, that there's a process to go through to make sure that does it need handrails, does it need what type of material, what slopes and whatever opportunities are there. If you look at what we've done in Kelly's Bush, there's an outstanding accessible trail we put in there with modern meshy materials or whatever that are very cheap, very affordable. So it may not take much to find grant monies to facilitate that. I agree, it's an essential midterm goal, but we have the money to do this swim site. It's a historic and traditional swim site. As Councillor Sanderson points out, it's part of the program of the Parramatta River Catchment Group, turning the river back to being swimmable. They launched a site on the other side of the harbour a couple of weeks ago, and progressively they're bringing online swim sites. The site is used as a swim site already, and I think if we can make it a bit safer and a bit more structured, then that'll be a benefit. And if we then work to understand exactly what's needed from an accessibility point of view, and also from infrastructure in terms of even down to parking and a whole range of things that allow people to get there. Sometimes sites, you're never going to make them fully accessible. It's a long way from the road. It is traditionally used by people who walk through the area or using the other facilities. So I think it's important we get on with the swim site as such and work diligently to build the additional infrastructure that makes it accessible and provides the amenities that are usually all needed in a swimming environment.
Thank you, Councillor. I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Now move to item 4.3, priority DA Sydney North Planning Panel determination. Councillor Cresswell.
So I'd like to move the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Moved with an amendment. Could we just pull up the motion as in paper on screen? Good.
Would you mind just
the
actual motion says the report be received and noted. Yes. The amendment is to include that line and then have point 2, that council explore next steps to prioritise an outcome for the priority location in the first quarter of 2023 by A, waiving the next round of DA fees and engaging with the applicant to support a beneficial outcome for the location, including an invitation to the applicant to meet with council to discuss community and business expectations for the success of the proposal. And B, presenting a business case style review of costs, opportunities and limitations for the renovation and ongoing management of the Priory.
Thank you, councillor Craswell. Is there a seconder? Seconded, councillor Quinn. Councillor Craswell, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that as a resident who attended the very first fundraiser for the Priory back in 2007, great night on Cockatoo Island. I've watched money come in and out the door, just propping up that magnificent building to keep it safe and relatively intact. I've been to every community consultation as a resident and since as a councillor on this building. It is an opportunity to restore and preserve a magnificent history and a magnificent building, and to bring business and services to Hunters Hill that I think the community would love. So rather than, I appreciated the original designs that the current applicant brought to council a few years ago. They changed significantly compared to what we were originally having. And I'd like to see if that original applicant is still interested in conversing with council about that. And to capture in the same motion, just in case they're not, that we need to keep moving on this site with what we're going to do if that is the case. So presenting a business case review of the costs and opportunities of the site is just sort of the next point within that, whether the applicant proceeds again or not. I think in good faith, I just think that we as a council should waive that next round of DA fees in order to just encourage that conversation. What happens after that with regard to who's responsible for the parking and whatever else goes on there, that's down the track. But for now, I feel like this is the next step forward that says that we as a council really want to engage and we want to keep moving forward with an outcome for the Priory. It's been a very long time.
Thank you, councillor Craswell. Councillor Quinn.
Just to be very clear, so in point 2, first bullet point, we're referring to waiving the next round of DA fees and engaging with the current applicant. Yeah.
Oh, so should we add current?
Just be explicit, otherwise it could be viewed as any applicant.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, councillor.
Mr. Mayor,
yes, question.
following on from that question,
Yes.
is there a current applicant? Being the last one was refused, has that person
Through to the general manager, I would imagine common sense would dictate that the current applicant is the person we've been dealing with for 6 years, but general manager?
Well, to the best of my knowledge, post the decision by the North Sydney panel, there's no new applicant. It's the current. It's define the word current. The applicant who had their application assessed at the North Sydney panel, which obviously was rejected,
is the most current applicant.
Is the most recent applicant. Yes.
So
most recent.
Mr. Mayor, is there an application on the table?
If an amendment is lodged, then yes, there would be. But I mean, we're getting semantics with words. But if you really want it to be,
no application. There's no amended application. Is that fair?
A new application would require to be lodged because this application through the City North Midlands, but planning panel got refused. So they'd have to come back again with a totally amended application or lodge an application to the council.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try and answer Councillor Williams' question direct. There is no new or amended application post the most recent decision. Yes, the answer is no, there is not.
Yes.
Can
Councillor
I
Williams.
ask a follow-up question on that? Has council discussed the intent of the previous applicant as to where they're heading? Do we know if they're going to put another application in? Is there some indication?
I would imagine, Mr. Williams, that this is Councillor Williams, that this is what this amended motion is trying to capture before he walks.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I have not had any discussions with that applicant.
Thank you. That's what the question
was. Councillors, there's a motion on the table. Any speakers for? Against?
I'm not quite sure we're on for or against. Different for, maybe. It's one of those tricky ones that you sort of look at and you go, well, it'd be nice if the previous applicant was to come back with a modified proposal, and we could accommodate that moving forward and go through the traditional processes. And I do note that we've got there that presenting a business case style review of cost. It was interesting when I first got back on council in 2017, the then general manager thought fairly broadly about the priority because it had been a long protracted issue for many, many years, and quite often didn't really attract business attention. So his view was to use some of our whatever those funds were we're using in Boronia Park to do the renovations and then to rent out the property at commercial rates. And he was talking about at those days $2.5–3 million, and then being able to get on the market anywhere up to $300,000 return a year. At the moment, we're going to get next to nothing out of the process. So there's other ways of looking at this. People have come to me and said that on the arts committee, there's a couple of really good examples how you could turn that into a resident art precinct. You've got the issues of maybe it could be converted into a boutique business or hotel, or residential accommodation under certain arrangements and whatever. So there's a whole range of opportunities that are still present. And I think that second dot point may allow us to explore those, because I think we need to look a bit broader again as to how we might move this forward. Because the building is decaying. It is a state heritage item. We've inherited from the state government without any funding, and it is our obligation to make sure that building is secure and adaptively reused.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for, against? I'll speak for. I think it's just as a gesture of good faith, if nothing else, given that we've been dealing with this current applicant, or successful tenderer, whatever you want to call him. There was some disappointment, and understandably, and I think that they are still committed, and they've spent significant capital trying to get to where they are. There are issues that I think, as landlords or prospective landlords for this applicant, which we as council need to address. I think probably parking is highest on that list of things that we need to enable them as the applicants to be able to satisfy satisfactorily. But I'm very happy to support the waiving of DA fees, because I think that there's a bit of disappointment there from the applicant. So I'm happy to support.
Just a typo in number one.
Noted. Yes, I saw that after I sent it. Sorry.
Councillors, any other discussion? If not, write a reply. Councillor Cresswell.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to thank the director for her long commitment to this project. It's been many years. Certainly dot point 2 is trying to capture everything you talked about, Councillor Williams. I do recall that some of the original funds raised were spent on a consultation and community needs analysis, and a gallery and an interpretive cultural centre was one of the things that the community spoke very loudly about at the time. So dot point 2 tries to capture a bit of that, and to capture a little of what you were talking about that the general manager of 2017 was also talking about. It's just that little point to capture that. So thank you.
Thank you, councillors. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Against? That is unanimous. Councillors, just given the time, is there any are there any items that you have a burning desire to either ask questions on or to discuss? And the general manager is waving at me.
Just before the councillors decide that, Mr. Mayor, just to reiterate that we do have a
speaker
statement that we need to read.
4.16. Yes.
4.16.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, 4.6 I'd like to do with
4.6.
4.5.
4.5.
Just a question.
Yes.
4.8 and 4.16.
Do you say 4.8, councillor?
4.8 and 4.16.
1.6 we have to deal with anyway. So councillors, are we comfortable to move items 4.4, 4.7, 4.9, 4.10, 4.11, 4.12, 4.13, 4.14, 4.15, 4.17 and 4.18 as a block?
12, I'd make it
12, sorry, excluding 12.
Yep.
Yes, so moved, councillor Crassoy, seconded councillor Preston. Any debates? If not, all those in favour? Against, that is carried. I will now move to item 4.5, delegations over the Christmas New Year period.
I just,
Is there,
just
before you do, councillor, is there a mover?
Yeah.
Move, councillor Quinn, seconded councillor Williams.
Yeah.
Question, councillor Williams?
Yeah, I just wondered why the delegations of the mayor is not there, but the deputy mayor and the general manager.
Yeah, not required under the Act, I don't believe, but I'm happy to take that on notice.
Just a question.
Yes, I will be overseas for a brief period, and I will be leaving the chair in the very capable hands of councillor Crassoy, the deputy mayor. I'll be back second week of Jan, hopefully. Yes, thank you. Councillors, any other questions? If not, all those in favour? Against, that is carried unanimously. Item 4.6, Fire and Rescue New South Wales Inspection Report 151 Victoria Road, Gladesville. Councillor Quinn moved, seconded councillor Williams.
Yeah, look,
Councillor Quinn.
Mr. Mayor, I've got some questions about this. I actually found this report incredibly alarming.
Yes.
To see that this sort of thing has happened in our local government area. And I'd also want to affirm and congratulate council staff for picking this up when clearly the matter was certified by others. I guess the main question I want to know is what action, apart from serving the order, are we also taking action with the building commissioner on, for all of this to have happened in the first place? There must be some other action that's got to be taken for this place to have been built in this form, other than just serving the order. There's some pretty serious stuff that's been missed in this building.
I'm assuming through to the general manager or the acting director, but
No, I'm happy to answer it, Mr. Mayor.
general manager.
So councillor Quinn, the key, well, thank you first of all that our new officer has got to this.
Yeah, fantastic.
And in addition, while it's not in the recommendation, the first step obviously is to provide the commissioner of the notification. I think it would be fair and pragmatic to say that when the commissioner reads the report, that they're going to take some pretty swift action.
Yep.
In regards to contacting the building commissioner, that's not our intent at the moment, but if you'd like to consider that we literally write a letter to confirm that to the building commissioner, I don't have an issue with that either.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to add that to the recommendation that council forwards this report to the building commissioner to advise the building commissioner of the status of 151.
Is the seconder happy with that?
Yeah, most.
Yes. Is there any other debate? Councillor Williams.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I agree, it's a very serious issue, but it is an issue that's come from the certification process. I'm just wondering, fire is only one thing a certifier is responsible for. Could there be other sleeping giants in this process around building compliance rather than just fire compliance? Is there a view of looking further?
I'll pass to the general manager.
Are we, councillor Williams, in the context of this property?
Well, yes. Oh, yes. In this specific case where we found a major deficiency in the fire side, is there any need to look further into other aspects of the building?
I'd have to take that on notice and ask some questions tomorrow, which I will.
Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I've read the report thoroughly too, and it's equally disturbed. I note that there are a number of items there that do not relate to fire. And that we haven't had full access. So I'm sure there are other things that need to be looked at, and I'm sure council will investigate all of those things and fulfill the requirements. One thing I would comment on, which I think the building commissioner is partially responsible for, is the new Design and Building Professionals Act, Building Practitioners Act, which came into force on the 1st of July this year, or last year, sorry. And I think the processes in that are robust enough. Hopefully they will put an end to the processes like this because of the reason, or the number of or the amount of certification around the compliance sorts well, actually, I think they're actually called compliance certificates that have to be issued by various practitioners, and the documentation of those is quite amazing. I'm going through that experience with a strata that I'm a chair of, and I hopefully that'll be the end of those sort of matters. But it's important we keep on track with the things that predate July 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Crassoy. Sorry, Councillor.
I guess it's just a comment, but I would be curious about this developer and about this certifier and their operations in our suburb more broadly. And I'm wondering, is there a way for council to track and investigate other buildings that
Something for a briefing, perhaps, if we do find that there are multiple. Councillor Sanderson, have you got a question?
I wondered whether people were aware that the certifier has had action against him, but he is still a
certifier. Yes, sure. Let's not venture too far into that territory, though. Councillor Quinn.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to suggest a slight semantic alteration to number 2.
Yes.
That we bring the word notified straight after the 2, or notify the building commissioner, the Commissioner of Fire and Rescue New South Wales, that council.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just put the word notify, so it makes consistent with the formatting of the recommendation.
Yes. So happy with that, seconder. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against? Is that in favour or against, Councillor Crassoy? Favour? Yes. Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, I just asked the General Manager if he could affirm the officer for the diligent work in uncovering all of this. Thanks.
Well done. Councillors, item 4.8, recording of council meetings. Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to move this one with an amendment. I'd like to add a point to it that council will retain recordings of council meetings in accordance with clause 5.36 of council's code of meeting practice.
Sorry, councillor, have you sent this through?
I'll give you a copy. I haven't sent it through. Yeah, I can affect preparation to make it easy.
Yeah. Let's just capture this properly.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I'm proposing, we add a point 2, the council retain recordings of council meetings in accordance with clause 5.36 of the Huntersville Code of Meeting Practice adopted on 1 December 2022.
Do you want to speak to the motion, councillor, and what perhaps that gives effect to?
Well, look, my concern.
Sorry, councillor Williams. I assumed.
My concern is that.
Yes, sorry, councillor.
Look, my concern about this report is it seems to be saying to the governing body that they're not going to implement what the governing body has requested in terms of clause 5.36 of the recently adopted code of meeting practice. A few things I'd note about this. I think one of the things that we've missed out on, and we really need to be better, and I know that Mr. Mayor, that you addressed this tonight, but it's really important in terms of this report talks about mitigating risk. One of the factors in mitigating risk is the caution that was given at the beginning of a meeting to warn people about the.
You'll notice it's a bit
being
beefed up.
webcast and we were not good at that for a time. We were doing it in the early stages. It seemed to disappear, and now it's come back. So probably that should be the third item on the agenda after the acknowledgement of country and prayer. So in terms of the risk, I got a little bit concerned because I think the report seems to be going a little bit over the top. I was a student of defamation law some time ago, and I know there have been some recent amendments to it, but I'd note that in most jurisdictions in Australia, there's a limitation period of 12 months on defamation, meaning that you would need to start your action within 12 months. Now, this can be extended by courts by a further 3 years. In New South Wales, I believe there's a provision coming in fairly soon, which will mean that that 3-year extension will be automatic, provided that the complainant has lodged what they're referred to as a concerns notice within the first 12 months. So effectively, the limitations period for defamation is you've got to basically start it within 4 years. It just happens to be the time that we have or that we specify that our stuff must remain online. So in terms of risk, the risk is basically gone in terms of defamation after 4 years. That's the period that we're planning to have the document or have the documents live. The other thing is privacy. Again, most actions in privacy will be taken through the New South Wales Privacy Commission. There, any complaint must be lodged within 6 months of the complainant learning of the alleged breach. With copyright, I don't think there's a great deal of risk in a 3-minute address. So the point I make is that the risks of storing data will diminish very considerably with time. And the other thing I have a problem with too, the report gives a value of $4.80 per meeting per annum. Now that is if the material is going to be stored on Council's electronic document records management system. Well, I don't know that after 4 years when it needs to be. I think what people have got in mind there is that if people apply to Council to have earlier records released, it would probably be through a GIPA process, although I'd probably prefer that people didn't have to go through that. So I don't really see that those costs as being realistic. We addressed when this matter first came up in relation to the code of betting practice by Mr. Mutton, who I know is quite a capable IT person, and he was suggesting the storage costs should be far lower. I'll suggest that material should be archived and brought out. So what I want to do is reinforce here what our code of meeting practice is, and hope that Council will comply with that. You know, I think we've gone down a very good middle line. At the end of the day, if we happen to lose something accidentally, there's no comeback on us. But I still maintain the point that these are modern historical records. They are of immense value. And I think if you spoke to people in the Historical Society, they would understand that. And I mean, I know we all there are all times in Council when I think you might believe that it'd be better if you hadn't said that. You might be embarrassed by your performance one night, but that is no reason for these records not to be maintained in perpetuity. Their historical value is far greater than that. And I would not like to see any records destroyed where it is.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
It is possible where they can possibly be retained.
Posterity. Councillors, any other discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? As carried. Item 4.12, report on legal matters, November 2022. Councillors. Councillor Williams.
Yes, I'll move the motion.
The motion, is there a seconder? Seconder, Councillor Quinn.
Just one minor thing which I've raised previously. I can't find the place in the paper, but when I look at that report, the legal context or why the item's there is not there, and I thought we were going to have another column that said the reason, whether it was removal of a tree or whatever the issue is, doesn't appear there, and you've got to read all the detail of the court processes, which don't really reveal what the issue is. So I thought we'd resolved a fair while ago that we're going to have an extra column that said this is what the matter is about from the one person.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Good feedback. Any other discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. I will now move to item 4.16, and there is a speaker to this item. Well, there is a statement to be read out by Shu.
I'll have
or by the General Manager.
So, councillors, there was a submission made. We thought the person was coming to speak, and then they've advised that they're not. Pertaining to 4.16, a submission from a gentleman called Mr. Martin Kennan from 23 Brown Street, Henley. We have great concern regarding the proposal for traffic calming along Crown Street, Henley. As a local resident living on Crown Street for more than 30 years, I'm aware of only 2 incidents at the Crown Street / Sherwin Street junction during this entire period, and the issue has subsequently been resolved by the installation of appropriate barriers. As far as I'm aware, there are no reported or implied ongoing speed issues in this suburb that would require speed cushions to be installed. There is no evidence that such a measure is required, which will ultimately cause grief, distress, and anxiety for the residents of Crown Street. It is well documented that speed cushions are not a deterrent to speeding drivers, and only so to upset community due to increase in noise from vehicles crossing or braking to avoid the barriers. There is no evidence that supports the installation of traffic calming management cushions on Crown Street will improve road safety, conditions of safety. Finally, as far as I can tell, there is no requirement for a pedestrian refuge. There are no pedestrians that access the proposed area. As a way forward to assist to resolve this issue, I believe a detailed traffic and pedestrian count should be undertaken, with the results to be made public that demonstrate there is a need for these proposed measures. Henley is the smallest suburb in Australia with only 472 residents. I believe that this proposal is a disgraceful waste of money, and the funds that are being allocated to this proposal can be better utilised to improve the junction of Kelly and Crown Streets, where it is well-known location for vehicles to damage their vehicle due to the angles of the road or other areas where greater risk to the public is evident.
Thank you, General Manager. Councillor Sanderson, have you?
Yes, I'd like to move the motion again with an amendment if I could.
Yes, have you got your amendment that you can hand up? Could you read your motion out, please, Councillor?
Yes, well, as it appears there, I put the amendment in red, the rest of it black. Part of the original motion was that the report be received and noted, and that resolutions in the report, then I'm adding comma, that other than that relating to Crown Street proposed traffic calming measures be adopted. 2, the proposed traffic calming measures of Crown Street, Henley be referred to the Movement Transport Committee, and then M and TAC in parentheses after that, and that all those who have made submissions regarding this matter be invited to attend and or address the meeting of Maytec at which this matter is considered.
Have you got a seconder? Councillor Williams. Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak to the motion further?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I mean, this is a matter that I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of people in Henley over, and I wouldn't say that the consensus, there's 100% consensus in the direction of the report we've heard tonight, but there is a fair degree of consensus there. I I was actually tempted initially to move that we delete points 1 and 2 of the recommendation in relation to Crown Street. But on considering the matter further, I thought it was better that we didn't. It was better for it to be further investigated. Part of my reason also for not going down that path was that there were, well, number one, that this particular report doesn't include any information or diagrammatic information about what is proposed, which I believe it should have. Therefore, it's very difficult to try to amend something when there isn't a proper explanation of what's there in the first place. I did look at the report that went to that committee, and I think it's important that be reviewed because there certainly isn't support by the Henley community for this proposal. And I think there are some significant issues raised, particularly in the light of the curved deflectors that they're proposing, which are nearby entrances and exits to parking areas and the Henley Community Centre. So I think that it needs further review, and that's the reason for this particular.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I might just invite Councillor Quinn to, as the chair, to make some comments about that, because I'd like to get a view of what the committee actually discussed.
Sure, Mr Mayor, and I'll foreshadow the recommendation as it is in the business paper. Look, there have been more accidents down there in Henley. There's been 4 reported accidents in the last 7 years. Crown Street and Sherwin Street, one on the corner of the Crown and Sherwin. There's other ones, actually they've all been around Crown and Sherwin intersection over the last 7 years. I guess I'd stress also that these matters don't actually come to council for resolution unless people have complained, and residents have contacted council with major concerns about what's going on down there. There were counts done, there were speed counts done down there, and that's what led to this recommendation being put to the local traffic committee, as I understand it from the report that was there. So it's not as though it was an uninformed report, and it's actually something that came from residents contacting council with concerns. So I'm a little surprised, and we've only got one person here that's complaining, one person. I'm a little surprised to hear that the Henley community has concerns about the proposal, whereas it's actually come to council because people were concerned about, what's going on down there.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers against the motion?
It's just a question.
Yes, Councillor Cresswell.
I think this was the last term of council, so again.
Yes, I think I know what you're alluding to.
Gone there, but Councillors William and Sanderson might recall that we had some funding to address concerns of residents, and there were some detailed designs done, which went back and forth a few times. I don't know what ended up happening with them because they're slightly different to what went to this traffic committee, but with that, there was consultation. Now, that was the last term of council, so it has to be, 2 years ago that consultation was done, but there was consultation done around those designs. I don't understand why it's been through council and a couple of committees and a recommendation made by the area traffic committee, and now because we've had an email from a resident where I don't know how much more the process could be followed.
Councillors, any other speakers against?
I'll just ask a question if I may to Councillor Sanderson. So how many people have actually commented on it?
10 or so. But there's a fairly consistent theme. I've only had, 1 or 2 that are in favour of the proposal. There is, what I'm getting is that there is a recognition that there is a serious problem at the bottom end of Crown Street.
That's the bottom issue.
No, that's Kelly Street.
That's Kelly Street.
No, but where we've had, there's been a total of 4 accidents at that end. That certainly has to be dealt with.
Councillor Sanderson, sorry to cut you off. Could I get an extension of time? Proposed Councillor Quinn, seconded Councillor Williams. All those in favour? Against? That is carried. Just abstention by councillor Cresswell.
So you've had 10 people say that they don't want this.
At least that, yeah. So it's pretty significant. So it'd be similar to the number of submissions I think there've been on it. And I think a lot of the submissions are in that direction as well. And one of the other issues we need to deal with there is we've got that bottoming out at the bottom of Kelly Street. And I mean, that is more significant than
that's an engineering issue though, to be dealt with separately. But anyway, I'm trying to understand.
Councillor, got a question or no? Any other speakers for? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's no budget here. There's also a history of putting in these speed cushions to achieve very little. All you got to do is look at the Manning Road pedestrian refuge. It slows no one down. So if we're going to put cushions in, then we need to make sure that they're effective. And all you got to do is stand and watch these things up in High Street or whatever. Everybody that's got a four-wheel drive or a Land Cruiser or whatever, they just go straight over them. And I must confess, I've got an Emerald and it is not deflected at all by them, although I do slow down because I don't ride fast. But the point is that the effectiveness of these things is not validated here. In the money source, I know we allocated some money in the last council for something like this, but is this the same? And is the funds in the kitty there for it? So I support that this needs further consultation.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers for? Against? Councillor Sanderson, against?
Right of reply.
Right of reply if you like it.
Yeah, look, thank you. As I said, I recognise there is a serious issue as on that street as you approach Sherwin Street, and that has to be addressed. It has been partially addressed through improved signage that could be improved further. It has been addressed through the proposal with the no stopping on Sherwin Street. Also the changes with even though the pedestrian island is not warranted, the fact that there is a pedestrian island proposed there is of itself a slowing down section, but I think it does need review. One of the other things that has come up with it is the access out of those streets. Now, some people have, there was a lot of debate about the series of the engineering defect at the bottom of Kelly Street. Now, from what I've seen, there was a photograph that was purported to say that no one would bottom out. In fact, the car that was photographed was in a position where, if you look at the position of the wheels on the hill.
Mr. Mayor, relevant. Sorry, Councillor Sanderson, we're in
We're in time. We've got fairly strict time limits here, Councillor Sanderson. So please stick to the motion at hand.
Well, this is relevant because one
Councillor
of the
Sanderson,
issues,
just make sure that you stick to the issue at hand.
it is relevant because at the end of the day, there is a bottoming out issue there. We're proposing vertical deflection in the other point of access into Grey Street and those other areas. So that way residents have got no options, and I think that's going to upset a lot of people. And again, I recognise the importance of fixing up the problem at the bottom of Crown Street. I don't know that there is one. Most of at the top end, because most of the traffic will be turning out of Victoria Road. They've got very little distance to travel.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Sorry. I will do that again. All those in favour? Against? That's carried. That being the end of business, councillors, is there any general business? I'd like just to first wish everyone a Merry Christmas if we don't see each other. Also to thank you for your participation throughout the year, but particularly to say thank you, a huge thank you to the staff and the general manager for all of their work throughout the year. It's not been easy at times. It has been a very big year. We have a big year of delivery ahead of us, and the resolutions of this meeting will no doubt keep you busy into Q1, Q2. Just in the past couple of weeks, I mean, Friday we had a really wonderful Christmas party that the staff put an amazing effort into. We also had a major flooding incident in Town Hall where the museum sprung a leak, and on this side of the building, the only part of the building that sprung a leak was my office, which had a minor deluge. And the staff were exemplary, and I know that the Historical Society were very thankful for the speediness with which council staff acted. So I'd just like to thank the professional staff and all that you've done throughout the year. Councillors, Merry Christmas to you. If you feel like libating, I am definitely going to the Hunters Hill Hotel for a beer, so you are most welcome to join me for a quick drink if they will have us. If not, I'll be calling Mr. Gallagher and demanding that they open. That being the case, if there's no other general business, I will close the meeting at 9:35 p.m.